Order. First, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's one of our few, almost everybody in person. Keith has already told us he's going to be running a little late, but he does plan on attending our work session. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Remind you that the work session is being streamed and recorded, and it'll be available on our website after a day or two. I'd like to call the roll. Chris?
Present.
Alan?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Dennis?
Here.
Sky?
Here.
Reg?
Here.
Karen?
Here.
Tonight's timekeeper is going to be Sky. So I'd like a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Karen? Oh, sorry, Karen got in first.
That's okay.
Any objections? Changes? No? All right. We have the agenda approved. Move on to resident speak out. We have two people signed up. And first off, we have Bob Dover. Welcome, Bob.
Hi, folks. Continuing what I was talking about a few weeks ago, in order to make science-based decisions and minimize your potential liability, CA must be advised by professionals with the highest level of directly relevant qualifications. As much as I appreciate many of the WAC's activities, they don't meet this criterion. While they are enthusiastic environmental advocates and have great training in green landscaping and removal of invasive plants, they're almost entirely non-technical amateur environmental hobbyists. They're simply not qualified to judge the benefits, hydrology impacts, and costs of a $10 million construction project in close proximity to hundreds of homes. Similarly, CA needs to be advised by individuals who've performed a thorough technical evaluation of each project. Again, this isn't what the WAC did. During the May 11 meeting here, the head of the WAC admitted that they hadn't done any review of the scientific articles cited in the prospectus, nor had they noticed that the prospectus was entirely based on articles that were more than 15 years old. CA's advisors also need to operate independently of the staff and its contractors, and this also hasn't happened. During a 2022 meeting, Mr. McCoy told the WAC that there was a substantial amount of public opposition, and he specifically asked them to take a vote and send a letter of support to, quote, help steady things. The WAC did this within a week, submitting a letter of support not only to the board, but also to MD and the Army Corps. The letter contained no original thoughts or analysis. It simply repeated the talking points, many of them not accurate, that Mr. McCoy had given them during the meeting. You may not think this is a big deal since the WAC has no decision-making authority. However, they do present themselves to the community as watershed experts, and many board members and residents have come to believe that this means that they have an informed opinion about hydrology, engineering, cost-benefit analysis, and things like that. They don't. But this has allowed them to disseminate false information about stream restoration projects throughout the Columbia community. When a project impacts an adjacent property and CA gets sued for damages, the board's reliance on the WAC is going to be presented as evidence of negligence. To avoid this, I recommend that CA amend the charter of the WAC to limit their activities to small-scale projects located a sufficient distance from property lines so that no off-site damages can occur. On large-scale projects like Elkhorn, CA must obtain professional environmental consultants that actually have relevant qualifications in hydrology and construction. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions?
Will you be sending that to us?
I will be sending an expanded version because the 3-minute versions are totally not sufficient, so I'll be sending an expanded written version.
Please send both.
Okay, yes.
Okay, next, we had Mike Liebersuch signed up, but I don't see him online? Okay, well, I think we'll move on then. If Mike does come, we can always move back. So we're on to the work session topics, and the first one is the outdoor pool season of 2023. Dennis, anything you want to?
I want to turn it over to Dan,
Thank you.
quickly.
Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, as always. Each fall, we typically come and do a presentation and overview of what the outdoor pool season looked like for the previous summer. And obviously, we're going to do that again tonight, but tonight's is going to be a little bit different than past. Normally, we highlight all of the activities that went on over the summer, the usage, and the fun that was had. And while we're going to do that, we're also going to address a lot of the challenges we've been facing for the last several years that kind of reached a peak this past summer. So this presentation is going to be a bit long. There's a lot of information. The other difference is, I came in 2015. I started in the middle of June. The next summer, my first full summer, Marty was my aquatics director. John Hertzen had retired at the beginning of the 2016 summer, and Marty took over as acting and then was promoted to be the full-time aquatics director, and he has led that team through a lot over the last 8 years. Marty is no longer the aquatics director, so I'll be facing my first summer without having Marty to guide us into that and help get that plane off the ground and then eventually land it. And he will address that during the course of the presentation. But I am very happy to have Marty join the administrative team as what we're calling our projects liaison. We have a lot of large projects that are coming up that require both technical and operational backgrounds over the next couple years, and Marty will be guiding that and leading and being point person for the community programs and services team, which a lot of these impact significantly. So I am very happy to have Marty as a person, but also the extensive knowledge and background he has still on my team and the CA team. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marty. He's going to do the majority of the presentation. I have a few things to say in there, but this is Marty's show.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Can
Marty.
everybody hear me? Okay. So I'm going to start off. This presentation's pretty long. It's about 40 minutes. I do have 2 or 3 break spots in it for clarifying questions. So I got to ask you that while I'm going through. I'll hold your questions for that section until I get to the break point, and then I'll ask if you've got any clarifying questions for that section. So I'm going to kick off talking about this summer, which is my normal annual report for the Columbia Association Board. We opened all 23 pools again for the second year in a row on Memorial Day. We had our early Stevens Forest lap swimming that opened May 8th again at the Stevens Forest pool. We had our full summer of yoga, which started May 30th. We had our full CNSL League, which also started May 30th, right after Memorial Day weekend. We had all of our aqua fitness and swim lessons kicked off right following the weekend, following school getting out. And then we went straight into the full summer of activities all the way up through CNSL ending on July 29th. And that's when we closed up our first 3 pools a little bit early, where we ran short on lifeguards early, basically first day of August, when we needed to start shutting down a couple of the pools. We've always traditionally closed the pools in 3 closings. So we had our normal first closing August 13th, which is the same amount of pools we would have closed, including the 3. We had our second closing August 27th. And as traditional, we had our 9 pools open through Labor Day on September 4th. We had a ton of events this summer, and a couple of the ones I'm the most proud of is we had, if you, a bunch of you remember, probably right before COVID, we were having a lot of trouble with the Columbia Clippers parent board, and we've reset that over the last 3 years, and they have really turned into a force for good for swimming in Howard County. Working with CA, they put on 2 great events last year and this year. The Howard County swim meet. Swimming is still not a recognized sport in Howard County, and the parent board, working with the Clippers volunteers and the kids on the team, get all the neighborhood kids together from their swim teams, from the other teams, so not just Clippers, the Eagles, the rec team at University of Maryland, all of them come together and they recruit their friends from their high school, and they put on, and we had 188 swimmers participate at Stevens Forest for the high school swim meet. We then turn around the next day, and this is, again, second weekend the pools are open, and we had another 99 swimmers from Maryland Special Olympics. And again, Clippers Parent Board put this on, working with CA, and they have all of the kids from the Clippers swim team out helping the kids. It is one of the best run meets that you've ever seen, and they're really grateful for everything that that parent board and everybody does to run those 2 swim meets. Perfect. Second, we have 2 huge events at the Clemens Crossing Pool that we partner with Ripid Events for, the Columbia Sprint Triathlon and the Columbia Kids Triathlon. Both events sold out this year with 500 attendees for both events. Without CA and Ripid and the county police and the Howard County schools all working together, these events couldn't happen. We all have to participate together to get the fields from the school system, to get the police to work with us on the times, the weekends, the dates. Everybody's working together, us for the lifeguards in the pool. If all of us were not working together, these events couldn't happen, and they're pretty much the only triathlons left in the Columbia area anymore, and they both sold out, and they're just so well run and amazing. We also had our Pedal and Paddle on July 10th, which we had 75 attendees, where they jump in the pool, they do 1 lap in the pool, and then they bike to all 23 of our outdoor pools. And then at every pool with a water slide, they go down the water slide and then bike on to the next pool. We also had the Coral Reef. It came back for both days this year, July 22nd and 23rd, at a new location at Jeffers Hill, which worked way better than McGill's Common. And we had 1,000+ attendees run through during the 2 days for the Coral Reef this year. CNSL. If you talk to almost anybody on the CNSL, it is the greatest program the Columbia Association does. We had the full thing, again, for the 2nd year in a row. I've got the numbers from the last few years. The 2019 was the largest that we had right before COVID. And then you can see we were closed, we came back, and you can see it's increased. We were almost back to where we were pre-COVID with the CNSL this summer. With that being said, it's starting to hit a capacity level where if you are not on the team and you are not one of those people that loves the CNSL, when we see our membership feedback and from Clare Bridge, different things, anybody that is not on the CNSL pretty much hates it at this point. Between the parking on the weekends, having their Friday night pools torn up by pep rallies, and when they want to go to the pool, all the morning practices, the cars, the traffic. So there's definitely some issues starting to pop up in the community where these large events are getting big enough where the residents near the pools, especially we had a big issue this year around Dorsey, where the neighborhood next to it was really upset with all the parking, and we had like over 100 cars ticketed one weekend. So we need to be aware that it's starting to cause, for every group that loves it and thinks it's amazing, we're starting to see a pushback the opposite way on the program as well. So these are numbers in total. So this was pretty much the busiest pool season on record. From me going back through all the master plan, everything that I have and can look through, summer 2019 was a record summer. Came back from COVID, we were at about 306,000. We bounced back last year. We were almost back to where we were in 2019. And this year we exceeded it. We really would have exceeded it even further. You'll notice that for the first time, our mass use went down in comparison. And the reason that is the 3 days of the smog, we lost thousands of missions to our mass use from canceled camps and programming during those 3 days from the wildfires from Canada. And if we had not had that, we would probably be closer to 430,000 this summer without those 3 days. So we had a lot of attendance this summer, both and as we go through this, one other thing to kind of keep an eye on is you'll notice the paid attendance starting to go down. It almost correlates exactly with the number of guest passes and admissions we're giving away over the different years. One of the things we've been trying to actively push, and the Tim and the marketing team have been doing an amazing job, is the Second Sunday Swims. So in summer 2019, we had about 458 attendees take part in that. And in summer coming back from COVID, we had about 239. Last summer, we had 675. And this summer, we had 784. One of the really great things is we have a really engaged aquatics advisory committee, and they were challenged a couple of years ago to come up with a better way to get residents engaged. And last summer, they came up with a new option outside Second Sunday Swim, which is to give all the Columbia Card families 4 Monday through Thursday passes to the pools. And you can already see we had 1,700 admissions this year, up 274 from last year. So we're already getting way more usage from the Columbia Card passes than we have ever gotten from the Second Sunday Swim. And this is a direct result of your aquatics committee coming up with this, pushing this, working with the staff, and getting this rolled out to all the Columbia Card families. With all this increase, we've also seen,
Please continue.
with all this, we've also seen, as you can see, a history on our rescues for the swimming pools. They continue to go up. So, and it almost follows the same trend in our attendance. So, those lifeguards that are out there are working hard, and these are not little rescues. These are not the lifeguard gets down, hands a tube. This is the full-blown blow whistle. Somebody is actively drowning, and they are jumping in the pool and rescuing them and bringing them to the side of the pool. In addition to that, they have all those others hopping down, pulling kids out, working with kids in life vests. These are the full-on rescues in our pools through the summer. Okay, that's my first break. Any questions?
Eric, and then Karen, Alan, and Reg.
Could you go back a slide for a second?
Yep.
So I noticed, like, before COVID, it was roughly 70, 80 rescues, and then after COVID, it's jumped to, like, twice as many, and I don't think our attendance has doubled, so...
It's a little bit attendance, but it's a little bit too, you had a break of no swimming. So during that period, you had, even though we had swim lessons, nobody was signing up for them. So, and that's aquatics wide, it's not just us.
But it's still going up. That's the
But
concerning
if you
part.
look at our 2019, it was going up when we had that crazy year of attendance. But again, it's doubled since then, but we continue to go up. But it's a little bit COVID, it's a little bit of the attendance going up as well.
Okay, next we had Karen.
Yeah, hey, Marty, I have a question about the rescues also. So you said the lifeguards are actually getting in the pool?
Yeah, that's when they blow the whistle, they jump in, they run, they jump in the pool and they rescue and bring somebody to the side of the pool.
How old are the people that are being rescued?
All ages, from little kids in the 5 to 6 range to full-on adults.
I guess I'm wondering, like when the kids are in the water, is the lifeguard just not catching them struggling earlier? How are we getting to a full-on rescue?
It could be going off the water slide, could be going
Okay.
off a diving board, could be they're going across the pool, and could be mom and dad trip and let them go. It's all different levels of that.
And the next thing I want to know is which pools is this occurring at? Is it occurring at the pools where we have like the water
A lot
elements?
of them are Hopewell and Swansfield.
That's
I
what
would
I
probably say about 40 to 50% of them, but they are all the pools. So there is a rescue at probably every single pool this summer.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm good for now. Thanks.
Alan, Reg, and Sky.
Couple of questions, and just to follow up, I can't do specific detail, but any serious injuries with that, or did we
Nope,
do our job?
we do our job.
Great. Is there anything, this is in recent months was the first I'd heard of this CNSL community struggle.
Yep.
Has something changed, or is,
I think it started a little bit during COVID when we only had the 15 pools and we had the prioritize, and CNSL took so much of that 15 pools, but as it's gone back, just people's work-life balance has changed. People are working from home, so, and I think a lot of it's that, but it's definitely, as the usage has gone up, people want to go when CNSL's there, and they don't want to go when CNSL, and I know a lot of it's around Friday nights with the pep rallies, because that's a night when everybody's off school and off work, and then you want to go to your local pool, and there's 300 people there, because it's not just the kids. So you look at all those numbers, it's not just the kids. It's mom, it's dad, it's siblings that maybe are not be on the team, sometimes grandma, sometimes grandpa. So it's a lot of people at the pools during those events.
could you go over the factors that went into your decisions to close the early pools? How was those decided?
Yeah, I've got that in the upcoming section, so I'll go over that more when we get there.
Reg and then Scott.
Okay, hi, how are you doing?
Good.
I noticed that you said you start closing down in August. Why August? Is that because the kids going back to
Yep,
school?
and I'll answer that. I got a whole section on the history and why we do that.
Okay. It's the first time I'm hearing about Columbia Neighborhood Swim League, and that's maybe because I do swim, but didn't really deal with that. So they were very successful here with the community, very popular.
It's amazing. If you've never been to one of the swim meets, it is absolutely one of the best Columbia Association programs we put on. I mean, those kids get basically 10 practices a week with the coaches, the pep rallies, the overnight event. Like, it's just everything's going on all the time, and those families that are in it are incredibly engaged and passionate about their teams and their pools.
So how do we get those that are not involved, who want to participate? Is it closed off now, or is there still opportunity to join?
No, right now, we've let the teams fill. We don't have any capacity limits on it.
Okay. And my last question is, when you talked about the tickets, the police going out ticketing because our events and people trying to find a place to park, do we try to coordinate with the police department, say, hey, we got this going on, it's going to be a lot of,
We do, and we send reminders from the teams, the team parents send emails, but people just also don't follow the rules. So, and unfortunately,
a little bit of both?
it's a little bit of both. Sometimes people not following the rules, not being good neighbors, parking in front of somebody's driveway because that's the closest spot, But we encourage people, carpool, ride your bikes, do all those things. But you guys know, people's behaviors are get in your car and go.
Okay, thank
So
you.
you're fighting that.
Thank you.
Sky?
Yeah, about the water rescues. Is the percentage of rescues per attendance, is that reflective of the nation as a whole, or is it a lot better because we have the Learn to Swim programs, or?
I would say for us, it's pretty low. Like if you look at water parks and everything, but rescues is a high. When you look at just Jeff Ellison Associates, who we work with, rescues are up across the entire nation.
Okay.
Since COVID, just like everything else, it put a break in the system. Everybody stopped doing swim lessons. They stopped going to swimming pools. They stopped. And one of the things I told all the lifeguards is when we reopened, you had 2 years where people may have not had a pool. If you had a 2-year-old and they were born right before COVID, that summer may be the first summer they ever entered the water at a wading pool. They've never been in it. They've never been exposed to it. So when you break the system, it takes a few years to catch up. And one of the things everybody's heard the challenges with getting swim lessons for the last 2 years is everybody that normally is going through the system is also fighting everybody that's playing catch up at the same time. And it's going to take a few years, just like everything else, before that works its way through the pipeline.
Okay, Chris, and then I'm going to offer Bill an opportunity because everybody else has had a chance.
Okay, so the first thing, so CNSL, it's, you talked about Dorsey, and that's really, people were parking in a parking lot that belonged to, it was a separate community, an HOA
Right.
and everything like that. So that's kind of what was happening. Has there been any discussion about teaming up with HCPD to have an officer on site right? And available to kind of make
not
people
yet.
aware.
Not
Okay.
yet, so.
Is that something we could do? Because I know that.
I don't know
I want
what-
that program to continue. I want everybody to have a good view of it. And if that's kind of what it takes to,
I don't know. We'd have to investigate because usually for those things, they make you pay. And it's not something they just will come out and do out of the goodness of their hearts. Usually just like with the triathlon, the Rip-It has to pay all the officers to come out to run that event. So it might be something where we would have to look into paying. But from the cost for security for the pools this year is not a cheap investment to have that.
So after Dorsey, the HOA approached us, our staff took that on, and instead of being at the pools, we had staff out on street corners and managing it, and trying to keep people in appropriate parking spaces.
okay, yeah, because I know there were announcements made, hey, if you're parked here, move, you know, the CNSL did everything they could, but people are going to do what they want to do. The other question I have is, that's really scary, the water rescues, right? I mean, you want to give me nightmares, talk about snakes and drowning, because those are my two things. Is any thought been given to having, to like restricting deeper water based on like having skill tests, right? Like there's a shallower area, and to be able to go past, 3 feet, 4 feet, you have to have a wristband on or something like that.
There's been thoughts of it, but again, it's the management of it. You're talking, we're already having lifeguard problems. You're talking about more lifeguards to manage that. And the way the Ellis program works, that's why we do the Life Vest. So one of the things you may have saw out there, we flipped to the soft style Life Vest, is when I was talking to the director of Disney when I was down at IAPA this year. One of the things that changed the water parks for them is they had like the old boating style Life Vest, and they went to the soft core Life Vest, I think that's the name of it. And people like those, they see them, they're more likely to put them on. And so we started replacing all of our Life Vests over the next couple of years with that type of Life Vest. And I think that's going to help make a big difference. And we had made a rule change a couple of years ago where the parent used to have to be in the pool within arm's length, and none of the parents would get in the pool, so just nobody wore Life Vests. So we changed the rule, you just wear a Life Vest.
Yeah.
And it way more, when you go around to the pools, you see way more kids now wearing Life Vests around the pool than you ever have.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference.
I mean, doing like a one-time skill test.
And we do that for the
You give them a wristband, they keep the wristband all summer. If they lose it, they got to take another one.
And we
right?
do that for the safety first, for the kids. So if you want to come to the pool without your parent, we do that test.
Yeah.
And
I
it
mean,
goes to their
maybe
account.
Just a thought to expand that, and it's either you got a wristband or you got a life jacket, one of the two.
Yep, something we can look into.
All right, thank you.
Bill?
That's, I'm like so involved with pools. I want to just thank you for your presentation so far. You're doing a great job. And to follow up on what Chris was saying, it's largely, I believe, a communications issue with places like Dorsey and McGill's Common and other places where parking is somewhat restricted and there's no parking signs. Having brought several teams as a team manager over to Dorsey, it's always a big deal to get on every parent's radar that, hey, make sure you understand where you can and can't park, because parking is a premium. Double up if you can. I think that goes a long way to actually having a successful meet out there. And for the bumps we've had, I would say that there were many meets that went off pretty well, including the All-City meet, which we didn't get a chance to mention.
Yep.
I mean, it's the people in Phelps Lock are just so gracious to allow us to be in their neighborhood for an entire weekend in quite volume. And I think that went off very well this year, too. So thanks. Keep it up. Mark.
Okay. Reg,
So
Alan,
I don't know if I'll
Chris.
catch some of this, but I've got a lot left and stay on track, so I don't know if it's worth pausing and going on, and I might catch some of the questions with what I'm going to get to.
Okay.
Okay,
Reg, Alan, Chris.
just kind of a strange question. I had a resident that's been hitting me up on this. Do you find many animals slipping into the pools, or is that a problem?
I mean, lots of frogs and stuff, but not like big large animals. Ducks, geese are the biggest offenders at the end of the season. So as soon as CNSL stops, we've been having a lot of problems, but it's not everywhere. It's specific pools. Kendall, Phelps Lock, Dasher seem to be the three biggest offenders. They're around the lake over there. They just
Snakes?
occasionally, not often.
You get to drown the
Okay.
snake.
He's trolling you, Chris.
All right. Alan and
brother.
Chris. I'm okay. Al, you're okay, Chris? And
Thank you.
What was the one in 2020?
That was indoor rescue at the swim center while we were open during COVID.
Okay.
But we still have rescues indoors.
okay.
The indoor pools are part of it, and we had a rescue indoors, well, during the lap swim at the swim center.
Thank you.
Okay, Marty, continue.
Okay, here's a little history about our training and what we do for our staff, because there's been a lot of questions about this recently. So we use the Ellison Associates Lifeguard Training Program. We've basically used it from the beginning with Dennis, I think, is actually in the book for some of the rescues from when he helped create some of the rescues years ago as one of the original clients. There's 3 different levels of Ellis. There's a Ellis Open program, which is kind of like Red Cross, where the lifeguards take it, they get a certification, they take it wherever they want, and there's no follow-up. We do the second level, which is an Ellis client. So we buy into their entire risk management program, and they come out, and 5 times a year, they do a full audit of our facilities. They go through, they videotape our lifeguards, they test their CPR, they go through our paperwork, so anybody that they audit or videotape, they check our records to make sure that they were trained correctly. And for the last 9 years, while I've been the aquatics director, we've won the silver award with Ellison Associates every single year, putting us in the top 30% of all the clients in Ellison Associates, up there with Disney, Six Flags, all the different groups. And it is amazing every year that we are able to get that. And they only give out 10 in the gold award to the top 10. So we've been on the edge of that a couple times, but it is very hard to cross that threshold to get that gold award. There's final level, which is Ellis Client Management, where they actually run your pools for you, and they only do that right now in the South. They're just expanding into the Texas area. So, but we have been an Ellis client, and we are a full client basically since the beginning. For a new lifeguard, they have to go to a 32-hour new lifeguard training class. In addition to that, they go to a 1-hour CA team orientation that covers clocking in, clocking out, sexual harassment, all the different things they need. They also come to the aquatics office a couple weeks before the summer, and they do a 2-hour aquatics presentation from me about pool rules, everything they need to know about the pools, and our IT comes out and does everything they need to know to cover all of the IT things they need to cover, from phishing scams, credit cards, you name it, they cover it during that time. After they leave us, then they go, they meet their pool manager, and they have a 1-hour pool orientation with their pool manager out at their pool, where they pull out the lawn chairs, clean the pool, figure out all their rotation. All that adds up to about 36 hours of training before they even do 1 hour of lifeguarding at the pools for the summer. Our returning guards, when they come back every year, they have to go to an 8-hour recertification class annually. So the Ellis license is only good for 1 year. Then they have to go through a 1-hour CA compliance refresher class, another pool orientation, just like they do every year. And so they go through 10 hours every year between your first year and your second year. Our managers on duty need an additional certification. So in Maryland, anytime you have a pool open, you have to have a pool operator on site. So they have to go to their normal 8-hour recertification class, just like everybody else does. But in addition to that, when you cross into this level to become a manager on duty, you have to take a 6 to 8 hour certified pool operator online primer class. You then have to, once you pass that, you have to come and then do another 4 to 6 hour in-person class and test to get your certification. You also do your 1-hour CA compliance refresher every year, your 1-hour pool orientation. So between the test and all of that, you're doing between 22 to 24 hours of training before you come back. And this is for, in the past, it was about your 3rd summer with Columbia Association. That pool operator certification is good for 5 years. Now, the problem is Maryland, or the Maryland only accepts it for 3, so you have to do a refresher at the 3rd year, and then you get another 2 years out of it. Your assistant pool managers go to their recertification class. a 1-hour CA compliance refresher, and the day before the pools open, we run a 4-hour manager training with us and our human resources department, and Dennis, Dan, everybody comes out, meets all the managers and the assistant managers, and we usually run it over at the Hawthorne Center. They do a great job of hosting us for the last few years on that. So they're getting 13 hours before they come back and for the summer. When you look at how we invest in the value of those programs, this is all picked up by the Columbia Association, and none of our team members are charged for any of this training. If they were to go and we were to say, you have to go take this class outside and come to us with this, it's $150 to $300 per person to receive that lifeguard class outside of CA. We train about 550 lifeguards, coaches, and pool managers each year because all the coaches also need this training to be a coach with us. That way, if anything were to happen during a swim practice, not only do you have the lifeguards that can help, all the coaches can participate in those rescues as well and be part of that safety team. The certified pool operator class, which is good for 5, is $350 to $500. The minimum price you can charge is $350, but most people that teach this course, this is their only job, and most of the going price right now is $500 per person for that class. In addition, once you pass the class, there's a $45 fee out of pocket, and what was before with Howard County an $11 fee, our county decided this summer in the middle of July to up that fee 500% to $57 a person for the Howard County license per person. So when you have 50 to 60 pool operators a year, look at that's all new fees hitting CA every year on our 23 pools. And we get trained anywhere from 50 to 70 team members as new pool operators each year. In addition to that, we have ongoing training all summer. So as part of your Ellis license between Memorial Day to Labor Day, they require 14 hours of in-service because they assume a 2-week vacation. They want 1 hour a week. So in a 16-week summer, they take 2 off. So it's 14 hours of in-service training between Memorial Day to Labor Day. We run a ton of training events throughout the summer. The day before the pools open, we offer a nightfall event for all of the first-year lifeguards, which is a 2-hour where the lifeguards at the end of the summer, when we've done surveys in the past, what did you wish you knew? Michael Hertz in our training ran a class that literally covers readings, getting on and off the lifeguard stand, all the stuff that they wanted to know before, and they take them out and run a 2-hour training for all the first-year lifeguards that have never worked before. On Memorial Day, before all the pools open to the general public, we run a huge training event in 3 different sites on the town. We are at Stevens Forest, Swansfield, and Clary's Forest. We run a daybreak swim, which is a 3-hour in-service for all the lifeguards. We have donuts, food. They go through stations, all their rescues. We get different groups out. The Howard County Autism Society, which is now the Autism Society of Maryland, comes out, and we run a leadership academy at Clary's Forest for all the managers and pool managers for 3 hours. We have a lifeguard competition in the middle of the summer every year where all the pools get together and they compete against each other. Because none of my staff can go to the CA annual picnic because the pools are all open, we offer a sports park night after all the pools are closed on a Sunday night where we cook hot dogs and give the lifeguards the same opportunity everybody else in CA gets. We have a weekly volleyball league at Kendall Ridge all summer long, which is a huge attendance. We get about 150 lifeguards a night through Kendall Ridge Pool for that come out, and we also twice during that time offer an hour in-service training so you can come before your volleyball game with your team, get an in-service, do your volleyball team, and then leave. We also, every one of the different clusters of pools offers at least 1 weekly in-service all summer long. So there's rampant training opportunities throughout the summer that we're running all summer long for our team. In addition to that, we have extra trainings above and beyond that we also offer. We work with the Positive Coaching Alliance for our Clippers team and our Clippers parents, and they also come out and do a training for the CNSL coaches. We work with the Autism Society of Howard County, now the Autism Society of Maryland, with their big announcement this past weekend, and they come out, they work and train at all the daybreak swims. They come out, they run a training with our swim lesson instructors, and now that partnership started with the pools, it's expanded to tennis and it's starting to expand out into other parts of CA. We're also working to become a certified autism center with the IBCCES. So you probably noticed some of the sign changes that started this summer at the pools, where we started going to the pictograms and things. It's taking a lot of work to get that certification, but we're hoping that later this year we'll have earned that certification for the pools with CA. We also have tons of the extra incentives. All of my supervisors have access to a procurement card. We get pizzas for the pools. They have a chance to offer their own staff nights and get pizzas. Anytime it's hot, we have a whole legion of ice chests and cold water and Gatorades, and all the supervisors try to run around and hit all the pools on hot days to help make everybody's working day better. In addition to just those are the extra things we do, we have a highly competitive pay rate. These are pay rates not only this year to show you what's happening as the minimum wage continues to increase. Just 5 years ago, it was half of this, right before all of this went up. So our pay rate continues to go up and be extremely competitive in the area. In addition to that, depending on how many hours you work and you're in service, and if you don't get written up for not showing up, we have 2 different tiers of a bonus incentive at the end of the summer for each of the different positions for the summer to encourage them to max out their hours and do what we've required of them by attending their in-service, doing what they need to do. Additionally, because of all the challenges indoors, we've had to offer a $2 incentive for the last 2 or 3 years to every hour worked indoors at the 4 indoor pools, the Supreme, the Swim Center, Columbia Gym, and the Athletic Club, just to get lifeguards to go inside and take shifts. So first-year lifeguard this summer was making $17 an hour every hour worked every time they worked inside during the summer. Additionally, because it's so tough challenging at the end of the summer, we've, for years now, offered a $2 end of summer incentive as soon as we start that first close to try and get as many people to stay and work at the end of the summer, and we offer up a $2 incentive. This year, we started it early. As soon as we were not able to when we wanted to try and keep pools open, we started offering that incentive up, and it still didn't get anybody to stay, and we'll cover that as we get into the next part. And again, I'm going to turn this over to Dan, but we continue to invest. When you look at the pools and the time that I've been in charge through the pools, we invest in our pools and in our staff, and I'll let Dan help with these next couple slides.
Thanks, Marty. So I thought I'd take all that information Marty was just sharing with the training, the wages, and everything, and kind of put it in context so you can see the investment that the team has made into aquatics. So this first slide is total operating expenses. As I said, I came in FY15. If you look at the 3 fitness clubs, between FY15 and FY23, the total operating expense for the 3 clubs went from $12.3 million to $13.1 million, 13.069. In that same time period, the operating expenses for the outdoor pools alone went from 3.9 to 6.35 million. A substantial jump comparatively for the overall cost, and that includes payroll, that's repair and maintenance, that's everything. So that's just operating expenses. The next slide, we look at only personnel expenses. During those same time periods, the 3 fitness clubs went from 5.1 million to 5.9 million, so roughly just a little under 5% increase. The outdoor pools went from 1.8 million to 3.4 million. It's like a 63% increase in personnel expenses on the outdoor pools alone. How does that fit into the larger picture? The next slide shows the payroll for my team, the community programs and services, which is about, in FY23 was $16.88 million. The fitness clubs without the pools were $5.1 million. The outdoor pools, as I said, were $3.4 million, which is 20.4% of my overall payroll. The swim center was $786,000, which is 4.7%. The fitness club pools are $783,000, which is 4.6%. So 29.7% of my payroll, which is more than half of the organizational payroll, goes to water and aquatics-based programming. The fitness clubs without the pools are 30.2%. If you add the pools in, they're 34%. And the entire rest of my department, which is school age services, teen center, art center, archives, tennis, sports park, makes up 40%. We invest a significant amount of our resources, our financial resources, to the aquatics team.
This is a chance for a break for some clarifying questions on that.
Okay, Alan, Karen, Sky, and Eric.
Two questions, one for you, one for you. Why did the big differential in the personnel costs if the wages went up for everybody, or were we already paying gym people way past minimum wage so it didn't go up?
No, there's an outsized number of minimum wage people in the seasonal team members, so that impacted.
That's sort of what I'm
more.
saying. So we were already paying the club people more than minimum wage.
No, they were making, there's just not as many of them.
But percentage-wise, it went up. Personnel costs went up higher percentage-wise for the pool.
Because if I raise 500 people $1 versus raising 50 people $1, 500 people $1 is a much bigger percentage, especially of a smaller number.
Not sure the math works that way unless there's something else counterbalancing.
Could you go back a couple slides to show this?
No, let Alan has the floor.
Well, but that's, if you're talking about the slide I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm
You go back a
asking.
couple of slides to that. I mean, if I had 1,000 people and I give them a raise, that's the same percentage raise as if I give 50 people the same
Yeah, but
raise.
it's not only minimum wage.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
So does that explain it? Is we're already paying some of those people that are in that blue fitness column, we're already paying them past minimum wage.
But we're also paying a lot of people in the blue outdoor pool column past minimum wage.
So what explains, that's, I
We're
think
paying more,
that's,
so what explains
Right.
the difference in percent?
what is the difference why is it so much different?
Because it's not only the number of people
I get that.
that are at minimum wage, where there are less, like I said, there's less people at minimum wage because you have less front desk tends to be, so there is less in that group. There are other people that are making
Then you're saying what I was saying.
more
I thought
than
I was saying.
minimum
So you're
wage.
agreeing with me, I think. So
Yes.
that's fine. Okay, that works for me.
Okay, you're right, I was hearing the equivalent positions.
Okay, no, I wasn't calling it equivalent positions. I love the emphasis on looking at neurodivergence in the autism community. Besides the certification and the whatever that you're talking about, how does that training, do you have an example or two of how that training has manifested itself in terms of how our lifeguards and pool people are?
Yeah, so it's really helped with some of our policy decisions. We've worked really well with King's Contrivance, with McGill's Pool. So with the Autism Society, we've got options now for kids with start-stop issues. It helps with when they call it breakdowns with the kids. So we have bags that we started putting out this year with some of the fidget spinners and things. So if you have those situations, it gives you, instead of when the lifeguard thinks the kid's being bad, it gives you a different perspective. And one of the videos that they show during the training is great, where it shows you what somebody with autism, from a child with autism's perspective of them walking through a shopping mall and the experience of how they would see the world and what causes a breakdown. And without those trainings, you don't get that perspective. And I think most of the team members that have either done stuff with Melissa's group and some of the other trainings we started to do really find it helpful, because it gives you a different perspective that if you don't, and I know we've got a couple guards with autism that love that we're starting to do that and they feel more welcome. So there's a lot of intangible benefits of that as well. And part of it too, and as we work with the Howard County Autism side, Howard County Schools is the place to go. We have more families with autism in our area than almost every, and where do they come? They come to CA Pools.
And while I got the floor, I just want to say, if I don't get a chance, I've been liaison to the Aquatics Committee a couple of times, and I've always appreciated the way you handle that committee, and the results are obvious, so thank you.
Karen?
You can skip me. Alan asked my question, so I'm good.
Okay. Sky? And then Eric.
Have you ever had to close a pool for one day or a few hours due to the lifeguard staff calling in sick? Or do you always make sure that there's an extra staff member at each pool for something like that?
So we'll cover that more, but yes, we have. So when we staff the pools, we usually staff for the minimum +1. So that way, if something happens, you can be open. But as we'll get to in the next section, it is more complicated than that now.
Eric and then Chris.
So I assume in those bars, training expenses are part of those bars.
Correct.
In the operating.
Yeah, in those bars that we see. And it all, based on your presentation, it seems that when you're hiring someone new, that's a much greater expense than hiring someone that's coming back. So the question I have is, what percentage of lifeguards come back year over year?
I'll cover that in the next section. Okay. It's a lot. It's pretty high.
Chris?
Are you also gonna, so you talked about attempts to retain lifeguards at the end of the season with increased pay. Are you gonna talk in the next section more about kind of why people are leaving and those kind of things?
Yep.
Okay, then I will.
All right, Reg or Bill, any?
No, I'm waiting for the next section.
Okay,
I think things are going well. We'll keep it moving.
okay. Marty?
Okay, let's move into hiring challenges. So going into, so here's a breakdown of the number of team members we've hired since 2018. So in 2018, which is like the last summer, I'd say everything ran exactly perfect, exactly how I'd love it to be. We hired 554 team members, and that summer ran smooth. We had our first trouble with hiring in 2019, right before COVID, where we ran smooth all summer, but we were short. So we were trying to figure out what we were going to do to retool, and it was kind of in the middle. And as you look on here, you can see we bring back a lot of returning guards that second year. It is not that big of a drop off between year one and year two for those returning lifeguards. 2020, COVID snapped the system. And when I mean snapped it, I mean broke it, stamped on it, and wrecked everything that we did. We had a cycle that every year, and so when you broke that cycle and we laid off every one of the aquatics team, and you lost an entire generation of first-year lifeguards, and all the pool managers, anybody that would have moved up from an assistant manager to a pool manager that year, didn't move up, and anybody that would have been a pool manager, teach them, left or never came back. So you lost at the front and you lost at the back. And the only people that came back when we reopened the facility were our most dedicated team members. Not everybody came back. So when we got back to reopen, it wasn't everybody that we were planning to hire, the 500 and some people we were hoping to hire that summer. It was only the bare minimum, like 100 lifeguards came back, but not even all my full-time pool supervisors came back. I lost half my full-time staff during that. And and then because of all the policy changes, wearing the masks, all the things, we lost those people too. So we went from, probably, and I'll cover it more, but we went from, everybody in the aquatics division in the full-time management side being a first-year lifeguard and through probably 15, 20 years to everybody had never worked for CA before other than me, Adam, and a couple of the other supervisors at the top. COVID wrecked on specifically on the aquatics division. It was extremely hard on us. When we went to reopen in 2021, we recruited the heck out of it. We tried everything. You can see, look at the number of first-year lifeguards we recruited, but look at the returning numbers and all the different levels, how much lower we were. And that was when we were trying to open 15 pools. And a lot of those were hired after we opened for the summer. So 75 or more of those team members. And so all those supervisors that are supposed to be supervising the pools weren't able to supervise because they were doing one of two things. They were in a guard chair at an indoor pool, and that's before we had the $2 incentive for the indoor pool because our finances still allow it. A lot of us were still below pay at that point. And you guys and everybody was doing the running lifeguard classes, trying to get that 75 people hired. So you had the other pools running on skeleton crews with no supervision because all the supervisors were running lifeguard classes or guarding. And you got to 2022, again, we started the summer short. We still opened all 23 pools on Memorial Day. We were scheduled to not have 2 open, and a bunch of lifeguards stepped up and said, no, we're going to open all 23, and we opened all 23 pools on Memorial Day weekend that year. But we ran 75 people short from Memorial Day to June, and we got those last 75 hired. But again, and we'll show more as we get into the next couple slides, this summer was the first summer we got to where we were in 2018, where we hired what we were supposed to hire. Tim, the marketing team, has done an amazing job. You guys have probably seen it driving around town. We've had banners everywhere. Your villages have hosted pizza nights where we come out to the community and recruit, where parents come out. Like, we've done everything we possibly can to recruit people, and we did it this year. And I'll show you some of the challenges on the next few slides. So in summer 2023, you saw there, we hired 312 lifeguards. 11 of those that we trained and hired quit or never worked before day one.
Wow.
Could be for any number of reasons. We have a lot of military families getting deployed, moving out of the area, found another job, whatever. Those 11 never worked. Of that, 91 of worked less than 140 hours. So our bare minimum to meet one of those incentives is 140 hours at the end of the summer. 91 of those didn't even meet the minimum required. But if you average out those hours of that 91, they worked 78 hours for the whole summer. That's one shift a week. One shift a week. So we spent 2 hours training them for almost every hour they worked all over the summer. Of the 49, worked the minimum amount that we require, the 140 to meet the Tier 1 incentive. 161, so but a little over half, worked what we wanted. They worked the 175. Our top 10 worked 432 hours or 27 hours a week. And when we get to the next slide, I'll talk more about things. Those guys, they killed it, those top 10. But look at the difference between the top 10 and the top 20. Look at the hour drop. Between the next 10, it's just as much. So you went from working 5 shifts to 4 shifts.
Yeah.
So then you look at average hours between our different positions. So in 2019 and 2023, for our management positions, look at the average hours worked. So in 2019, the average aquatics manager on duty worked 342 hours for the summer. This summer, they worked 317. Our pool managers worked 464. This summer, they worked 431. And our pool managers worked 663, 481. You go back even further, another 5 years before that, the average for most of the pool managers was closer to 900 for the summer. So you can see over time, it continues what they want to work and how many hours they want to work over the summer is continuing to go down. But then look at the years of experience. This is where I try to explain how COVID has wrecked the system. Our aquatics managers on duty used to be about your 3rd year. If you were a rock star, you might get it on your 2nd year, but you had to be a rock star to get it on your 2nd year. Most of the time you got it on your 3rd year. Most of them are getting it on their 2nd year now. Again, you're same with your assistant pool managers. But when you look at where our pool managers are, look at the number of years experience, then look at the hours worked. Is there any wonder? When do they, and we're going to get into more of this, and when you get into the full-time pool supervisors, you see that 5.33. If you take out one pool supervisor out of that, the only one that's been through COVID and stuck with us through all of this, it's 0. All of our other pool supervisors have worked for CA less than 1 year. You take Brendan out of that, everybody else has worked less than 1 year. He averages that out for the 5 years. So it's tough. In addition to that, you've got an HR issue in the middle of this. Trespassing and pool hoppings. We had to spend $40,000 on security this summer to deal with the pool hoppings that were happening after hours that were so damaging and the bullying associated to them, because they were targeted. So if you had a manager that was doing a good job and you didn't like it, you were trying to hop their pool the night before and throw in all the lawn chairs and turn on their chlorinators. So for 6 or 7 weeks this summer, we had to pay security, and then the security got in trouble, and then we had to upgrade it to armed security because of problems that were happening to them. So then you got a different issue with social media, bullying, cell phone in the guard stand. We're losing team members to those things. No call, no show, and other performance. So we're losing team members due to those different issues.
So I just want to clarify, the security issues weren't with our team members.
Yeah.
I was just gonna, I was
I
like,
just wanted to put that in there. It wasn't because of the people hopping the pools. It was some of the other
Yeah.
people who inhabit the neighborhoods where they were
Yes.
patrolling.
Understood that.
And there are a lot of social changes with being a lifeguard that make the job extremely difficult. And it is not the job that people used to want to like. The no cell phone in the lifeguard stand is a killer. The staff hate it. And that you have a job where you will lose your job if you have a cell phone in the guard stand. I mean, it's dangerous, and you see it, but when you watch our lifeguards, they sit there 20, they run to check their phone. They have missed so much in that 40 minutes. The young staff also equate lifeguarding with authoritative positions, kind of like the police. Nobody likes them right now. The community doesn't like them. Their teenage friends don't like them. It's not a job that's respected in that group. And the guarding follows them back to high school. So if you have a problem kid at your pool, and it used to be you just dealt with it for the summer and you kick them out, it doesn't end when you kick them out that day. They go home, they make a TikTok video about you or whatever, and next thing you know, it's not just your high school, it's every high school in Howard County knows that you're the bad lifeguard and everybody hates you. And so it makes being a lifeguard at CA extremely difficult. Increasingly, too, our residents expect more of them. All around the pools, they expect them to come out and solve the problems on open space in areas around the pool. So if there's a fight happening on a field nearby, they want the lifeguards to come solve it. They want the lifeguards, somebody's flying a drone, somebody's doing whatever, they come over to the pool because they're the person with the CA shirt on and they're expecting them to manage all of the stuff going on around. And then confrontational members on rule and policy enforcement. It's a lot. You're 15 and you're just getting berated all day about, and if they're mad about CA on one thing, they're bringing it to the pool at the front desk. It makes it for a job. It's not the same job it was 35, 40 years, not even 10 years ago. It continues to change and evolve, and these challenges make that part of that recruitment even harder. Questions on that part?
Okay, Karen was first, and then Al, and then Eric.
I got a lot of questions here, Morty. So it's good to see that the numbers have recovered. I have one quick question for you here. What are the total man hours for the summer? Like if you were one person, if you didn't take any vacations, you just worked 40 hours a week, how many man hours could you, what's the
I'm
total?
not great math off my head. It'd be,
How many weeks is the pool open?
the pool's open 16 weeks essentially. So if you did 40 hours a week times 16, but it's more than that. I mean, when I was a pool manager, and again, I'm the abnorm, I worked every morning at the swim center from 5 a.m. to 10, and then I ran Dorsey Hall Pool from 10 o'clock in the morning to close, and there was one paycheck where I made more than the CA president during a 2-week pay period because I worked overnights and stuff. So, you can work as much as you want or as little, but if you wanted to just say 40 hours times 16 weeks, somebody else is
640.
640, thank you.
Okay, so 640 is, and that's not including, that's just like regular lifeguarding, right? That's not
Yeah.
including if you teach swim lessons, if you're the swim coach, it's not including
Yeah.
any of that stuff.
Correct.
Okay. I'm really interested in all these issues you just presented about lifeguarding. how many cases of, I mean, so with the bullying, is every, like, what are we seeing? Like, what is the, I guess I would like to really understand. If our lifeguards are being bullied, I'd like to know, like, how vast is this problem? Is it just one person who's having the issue, or is it every single pool?
It's not
being
every
reported?
single lifeguard, but it's out there.
Like,
And
what's the percentage?
I couldn't tell you off the top
Is
of my head.
it 10 people? Is it
It's
one
only if they
particular
report
pool?
it, but it is more than, it's more than 10. But there, again, there's parts of this with team members involved where it's also team member to team member, so I don't want to talk about it in a public meeting, I guess.
I'm not asking you to name
Yeah,
names. I want to
yeah.
know how big the problem is.
It can be a fairly significant problem.
Okay, so, and what are we doing to address that?
There's not, you can't control people outside of CA.
So are we just, I mean, I guess you were saying it was also team member to team member, so I'm really concerned about that too, if we're bullying each other.
That is being managed.
The team member to team member is managed.
Yeah, our HR team is very actively engaged and coordinated all through the summer with the aquatics team on and managing and addressing all issues.
So is that the reason, I mean, I guess I really want to understand is that the reason that the lifeguards are giving when they leave at the end of July?
No, that I'm going to get into the next part. That's just part of why recruitment's hard. I've got a whole nother section on scheduling and why people are leaving.
Okay, and then my last question is, and I'll leave it till the next section after I ask this question, but do we need to have a part-time lifeguard position? It seems like everything here is full-time, and you were saying some of the lifeguards don't want to work.
All of this is part-time. We have very few full-time. I mean, we've increased the full-time, but, I mean, what do I have, 20 full-time positions in all of aquatics?
So
It
it's
is
a
almost-
seasonal, but full-time seasonally, right?
They're all part-time. No, we have no seasonal. About 5 years ago, there was a policy decision by the board with us where we got rid of all of our seasonal positions. They all earn overtime. They all earn vacation. They all earn everything, just like every other CA team member.
Okay.
We have no seasonal positions.
Okay, we're going to add another 15 minutes to the, because we're getting toward, Alan and Eric.
One good thing, I think, if I've understood your charts, we had a pretty huge return group, 2023 compared to 2022. Lessons learned, how?
Yeah, I mean, in general, we have a pretty great job. But again, what you're seeing a lot is COVID working its way through the system. And you were at the CAC meeting, I said, we're recruiting really, really well, but the staff is young, and I'll cover that a little bit in the
I'm
next
just saying that
section.
the return group in 2023 compared to 2022 looked bigger than comparing 20.
Yeah, I think extra people came back that had been away for a couple years, so we.
The numbers you were talking.
I'll add, 2021 was a hard year.
I get it.
I mean, that was not, I mean, you're dealing with COVID. People were not nice around COVID and the policies and regulations. Now that has minimized, but it's not gone away. There's not a lot of grace out there these days, but 2021 was a hard season for the pool.
Trying not to compare things to 20 and 21. The 11 who didn't work from day one, the 91 who didn't meet minimum, without, if you don't have the exact numbers, were those two large percentages compared to previous years, or is that pretty much what you get
No, it was
every year?
much worse than previous
Much worse
years.
than previous years. Couple of questions that sort of related. You talked about the lesser experience. Any possibility in your mind that the lesser experience of the guards had, and managers and, up the chain, had any impact on the increase of the rescues?
I don't think so, because that's the one area we train really, really well, so I don't think so.
Okay. And similarly, I think we've already established that pool hopping is not an HR issue, it's a security police issue, so, but
Oh, if it's a team member and we identify them, it's an HR issue.
these are team members pool hopping?
Yes, in
Well, I
some
thought this
cases.
was-
In some cases, sometimes it's members, sometimes it's
Okay.
team members.
No,
I get
the
it.
reason the security guards had to get guns wasn't related to team members or pool hopping.
Good. But maybe, so again, do you think, any sense that guard inexperience had an impact on their ability to, I mean, I loved your points about social media and all that, that made a lot of sense to me. Any sense that guard inexperience also contributed to their lesser ability to community members be mad at them, or other guards be mad at them, or whatever?
Maybe a little bit, not really. I think since COVID, it's been a different world, and it's a different thing. And, people are still not happy that things aren't exactly how it was before. And, as Dan said, was 2021, it was a rough summer. I wrote 5 different schedules that summer. We had to start with hourly reservations, and then a week and a half into summer, they changed the rules, and we were able to open the pools more. And then 3 weeks later, we were able to open them more. It's been a wild ride the last 3 years.
So those things Marty addressed, when it comes to customer-facing team members is not unique to aquatics. It's just very concentrated, and it's not unique to us. That there are a lot of part-time businesses and customer-facing businesses are struggling to recruit staff because they are not pleasant positions a lot of the time. Because as I said, the amount of grace that's being given has decreased dramatically since COVID.
Eric and Bill.
Could you go back a couple slides to the hiring numbers? Yeah, there. So I look at 2018, 2023. 2023 we had 565 compared to 554. So it looks like we're doing better in 2023 from a hiring standpoint.
Yep.
And yet 2018, I don't believe we closed any pools, but 2013 we're closing them early. So why?
That's what I'm going to get in. That's what I was getting to is the number of hours worked.
Go to the.
So look at the number of hours worked. This is the issue right here. So each one of these positions is working way less hours, and all the guards, when you look at the previous slide, look at the number of half of the lifeguards this summer I worked less than 1 hour a week.
So it sounds like we're able to hire because we're hiring. We're able to retain because last year we had the actually largest people coming back. So I guess the next question is, why are people just working fewer hours?
A lot of different reasons. School programs and multiple jobs. The biggest thing I heard this year, a lot of lifeguards also had jobs at Merriweather. Because you get a free concert and you get your pool membership and you get all of that. So people are doubling up trying to get the best deal for themselves.
Can I just rephrase that? Are people working fewer hours and they're just instead of working 2 shifts a week, they're working 1 shift a week? Or are they working fewer hours because they've worked June and they say, I'll do something else in July?
No, not really. Usually it's a cutoff in July, and I'll get to that in the next part with scheduling, and that's more to do with school. So a lot of this is front-loaded. So even in that group, you had a bunch of that group that worked first couple weeks, maybe 2-3 shifts in June, and then they were done in July. And I'll get into that when we get into the scheduling part next.
Okay.
Bill.
I just wanted to highlight a piece that I saw in your slides here that we're up 18 positions in the lessons instructors there. And I just want to say that keep that going because that certainly works to our benefit to having more people better able to swim that will eventually become lifeguards when that's planting good seeds. So keep doing that.
On that, I'll just add a note that while we hired the same number of lifeguards, what's buried in those numbers is that, and it's not new, it's been several years, but it's getting worse each year. And I've talked to Andy about this. Owen Brown is a particular challenge. Those are the last pools we staff, and those are the ones that unfortunately were some of the first affected because you have Dasher, you have Hopewell, you have Lifetime Fitness, you have Supreme, all in this small area. And we need more teenagers in Owen Brown. But it's not just Owen Brown, it's Running Brook too. The Running Brook area, those are our last 3 pools to get staffed.
I'm sorry, I'm butting in here, Andy, but it sounds like we're only staffing with people who live in that village?
That's not only, we move people around, but a lot of our staff walk to work. They're teenage kids, 15, 16 years old, who don't have cars. And so.
I don't mean to be a pill, but I used to ride my bike down 29
okay, go talk to the
McGill's
kids.
Common.
I'm just telling you what we hear. We move kids all around, but predominantly the kids that work at the pools live in those neighborhoods.
Okay,
One
let's
question.
let Marty go, because we're getting into scheduling, I think.
Well, I just have a quick question. If transportation's an issue, could we offer a shuttle service to from the nearest pool to a different pool?
Let's let Marty go into scheduling.
So there's a lot of scheduling challenges. So let's just do a little schedule history. CA works with the villages. So pre-COVID, we've been working with the village. I know some of the villages say no pool should ever close, but CA basically says the villages can select any pool that has more than one pool. They can close one during the first closing, which lines up with out-of-state college leaving. Second one when Howard County schools start, and then we keep one open. Each village does their own thing. Some have the exact same pools, and some change. Wild Lake, good example. I've been back and forth with you guys for the last 5 years. You know, you guys forever just did Faulkner Ridge and Bryant Woods back to back, and always left Running Brook for Town Center in the middle. And now you've decided you're going to rotate all three of them all the time. Harper's Choice, for a long time, you guys never rotated. You had the same. You've changed recently, and now you guys are flipping because the numbers at Hobbits Glen are going up, and the people there wanted that. So it's a constantly changing, but we work with the villages. I go out to in the past years, I go out pretty regular to the village meetings, and we work with the villages on those pool closing schedules. If I were to pick them, it'd be very different. I would be picking biggest pools, things like that, and I would try to space them better around town. But again, this is where we work with the villages. You guys get a say, and everybody's village is different. Some, again, they follow the same pattern. Some rotate. Some have really crazy. I think King's Contrivance has one of the crazier ones where they always want Dickinson open unless it's the early one. So, like, we have to work through all of that and keep that schedule going. But just in that, it's a lot to keep track of every single year. But what drives the scheduling has very little to do with me. It is entirely Howard County Public Schools, the University System of Maryland, and all the other out-of-state colleges. This year, 60% of my college-aged kids went to out-of-state colleges. 60%. So when you get into the next part and you look at what their availability is, when you go to Howard County schools, they can start working on Memorial Day. That school sports usually end about then. They don't have to worry about college move-in dates, but school sports start around the third week in August. As soon as that stops, you lose 50% of your lifeguards right then. Whether it's football, field hockey, whatever's going on, they just stop. Occasionally, you'll get one of them to come back on a Sunday when there's no football games, no sports. And that was one of our challenges this year with why we were having to close extra pools on Saturday, is they all had sports games and nobody could work. Then you get into Maryland College. It's slowly been sliding back up. It's getting a little bit faster. So again, we'll talk more about this later, but they get usually available right on Memorial Day. They get done pretty much, finals end the week before Memorial Day. They get back, they have like 2 days, and then they're at their manager class, they're at their lifeguard recertification, and they're out at the pool working. It's not like they're getting a lot of time between Maryland schools ending and starting work on Memorial Day. Around the second and third week of August, college move-in starts. So if you're in sports or whatever, right around then you start moving into school, and if their sports start, you're out. They're not back. They're not coming back. They might come back for Memorial Day weekend, but they're not coming back during the week, Monday through Friday. They might come back for a weekend if they really want the money, but a lot of times, as soon as school starts, you lose those college students. And out of state, this is what's become the biggest issue. It is continually moving forward, and a lot of the old out-of-state colleges are moving to even 5-semester classes, different things like that, where they're starting school sometimes early in July. So if you're one of these out-of-state kids, and this year again, it was pretty high, a percentage of our kids were out-of-state colleges, they can start early. These are the team members that come back, help open up Stevens Forest and get Stevens Forest open for that early lap swimming, and then help get the rest of the pools open and do some of the help with the power washing, different things like that we do to get the pools ready. But last week of July, they're leaving. They're gone. There's not if they're going to North Carolina, Florida, California, wherever they're going, their last day, sometimes, and if they go on family vacation, so let's say they have to move into school that last week of July, and their parents are going on a 2-week vacation, I'm losing a manager or assistant manager July 15th for the summer. I got half a pool season left, and I'm losing them. And then, and this is the first summer where it started impacting CNSL. I think we had our first time ever. We had one of our coaches not being able to make All-City because of family vacation and leaving, because they were going to out-of-state college. Never happened. We've not had one of our coaches there for the All-City meet. So our summer's getting shorter with a lot of our workforce because of this, and this is really impactful to us, and there's nothing you can do to change it. You tell them you're not going to give them a job? Okay, where am I going to find the other person? These are the impacts we're having, and there's no choice. If you tell them they're going to work after that date, they just turn their resignation in, and we lose them forever. So would you rather have them from Memorial Day to July 15th, or would you rather not have them at all? Right behind all of those school scheduling things, our Department of Labor, when you look at my staffing, all of these kids are allowed to work. For a majority, about 60% of my workforce are limited to shifts that are about 5 hours a day. They can work more than that if they take a break and you split shifts. But let me tell you, most people are at 15 are not working, taking time off and going into a morning shift and coming back at night. So, and when you look at my shifts, when you broke out my really highly effective team members, it broke in, they basically worked 6 days a week for 5 hours a day. But on the flip side of that, you had the other team members that were doing 1 day a week. But these limits, we don't have any choice in. And our software enforces it that we use for our team member. We can't get around it. So it helps make sure we're being enforcement. Our 16 to 17-year-olds, it frees up a little bit. But again, they're 30 to 40% of my workforce. So this impacts when do the pools open? When do the pools close? What's our school schedule? This is what drives the hours of operation of the pools and what we do. It's those school schedules and these labors, because 60% of your staff fall under these requirements. And these are the challenges that we have to face when scheduling these team members and meet all of these different choices. So a little bit of history too on the end of the pool season. In 2015 was the last year where we tried to open all of the pools in August, Monday through Thursday. And I know this has been a big sticking point for the last few years for people, but during that year, we were only able to open 3 of the 9 pools, and it was a hot week that week. As somebody that guarded that week, it was miserable. I guarded from 5 a.m. at the swim center on a couple of those days till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I went out to Dorsey Hall, and John Hertzen was working the front desk at Dorsey Hall, and it was me and one other lifeguard at Dorsey Hall Pool trying to keep that pool open. So you're asking all of your full-time staff basically that week to work 15, 18-hour days because there's nobody in high school available. Because what do our parents value? Good grades, sports, education. If you got kids, you know what you value right then. It's not going to work. You're going to your football practice. And we need to be aware of that. It's not that the kids are lazy. It's they have other priorities and we're not the priority. So in 2016 was the first year we didn't have any pools open Monday through Thursday during school in August. Now, luckily, we got the best gift ever that the following year. The governor changed the school start date to after Labor Day. From 2017 to 2019, we kept all the pools open through Labor Day. We had almost no staffing issues because all the school sports start pushed back. We were able to keep all those high school kids working right up until the last day. And around March 2019, the General Assembly changed the order on Labor Day that schools could change it right as COVID hit. So after we came back from COVID, all the schools went back to starting in August. All of our problems came back with family vacations, all of those things, and we had to go back to closing the schools Monday through Thursday. There's not an option here. If you can't do it, there's not enough bodies, and if you open 1 or 2 pools and it's a 100-degree day like it is this year, those pools are overwhelmed. It's not safe. You can't do it. You can't put the guest in the risk, and you can't put the staff in that situation. And then there's a bigger history. This is not the same pools we ran years ago. In 2003, we had to start guarding the wading pools, and the lifeguards hate it. It is the worst sit, and everybody hates it. You have to sit there, and a lot of times, it's one kid in the pool. But it's a 25% increase at every single pool around Columbia, every day, every hour worked, every hour of operation since 2003. Additionally that, in 2005, they had a lot of accidents in camps around the state of Maryland. Maryland changed a lot of the camp rules, and so now whenever you have a camp at the pool, daycare, youth group, Boy Scout group, whatever, you have to have one guard for every 25 swimmers in the pool. So when you bring in a large group of 200 people, it's not just the 8 lifeguards in the stand. It's the other 4 lifeguards that have to rotate them. It's the manager. So suddenly, what used to be just stuff that happened, it's overwhelming to the system of all your lifeguards. And we have a lot of those camps and a lot of those groups. And then you add in, starting in 2008, during a bunch of audits and things, we were having issues with the coaches, and a couple near rescues during CNSL practices, and we had to start staffing and guarding the CNSL pools. So again, now there's another 40 hours a week times 2 lifeguards times every single pool times whatever. It just keeps going up all of the time. And then we added extra CNSL practices in the evening in 2014 because as the shift is turned, as parents are working more, and both working parents, a lot of people aren't as doing as many of the morning practices, but the evening practices are super popular. It pretty much eliminated the closed days. That's why we don't have closed days on the pool schedules anymore. They are used every single day, almost every single hour. So even on the days where they're closed to the public, they're having CNSL practice in the morning. Then they're having a camp. Then they're having another event. Then they're having that. Then they're having a village party. Then there's it's just more guarding and more hours, and it's overwhelming the system. And this is where it really gets me. And this is ultimately what ended me. And I'm going to be a little honest here. The COVID call-outs are just destroying the supervisor staff. And it broke me and it broke my assistant director this year because it's been the 3rd year in a row where as soon as it gets 95 degrees out, we have 30 or 40 lifeguards on that day call with COVID tests. And it's not just fixing that day. So in that morning, you're running around now trying to find 40 lifeguards on a 95-degree day when the pool's going to be its absolute busiest, trying to call subs, get people, move supervisors around. Then you're also having to find them for the next 5 days. And heat waves don't just come on that day. So for the 5 next hottest days, you're now down 40 lifeguards. And then they don't even want to come back at the end. That's if they even had COVID. Because you can't prove it, they got to send a picture, but you got to basically trust because of how it is right now. But then, now your supervisors are in lifeguard stands. They're not supervising. They're not bringing the Gatorade. They're not doing the incentives because they're in a lifeguard stand. I'm in a lifeguard stand. And that's what broke my wife and I this summer. In the middle of the day, when I was supposed to have my family in town, and we were having my baby shower, I missed out seeing my mom, seeing my aunts, seeing my entire family. I didn't even get to participate. Because I was on a pool deck, keeping our pools open. And when I got home that night, my wife turned to me and said, "No more." And she grew up as a CA lifeguard. She knew what she was getting into with me when I got the job, and she accepted it and loved it. This was the year she finally said, this 3rd year in a row, no more. So this is breaking the system. And it's breaking the supervisors, breaking everyone involved. And then you add in the younger team. So we're trying to train up the new supervisors, but they get broken. And then they start making decisions. And then the HR stuff with performance starts getting involved. And then you got to get involved with that. And then it's the whole cycle through this is broken. But when you add in the social changes, the cell phone change, all of this just is still going through our system. And it's tough. And there's not a silver bullet to this. And then, I really want to thank Alan. You publicly stepped up when I was getting destroyed by our members this year. And that was one of the few, kind of things that kept me going those last few weeks. And I really want to thank you for that. But the every time you close the pools, you're a racist. You hate people. You know what? It's not. It's the kids can't work. You're looking at a location. You said earlier, what is it? The pools that get closed are the pools where the lifeguards all left, or we had HR issues. And they don't walk, they don't travel. So you got to look, what's the closest pool and what's going to serve the most people? You're not going to shut down Swansfield to keep open Longfellow. As much as they might want you to, you can't do it. It's your number 3 attended pool. You got to throw your people where the most important to the system is. And that's why it's a network of pools. And you go back to our master plan, different things. We want a network of pools. You got to focus on that. Everybody loves theirs, but we got to handle that. So we'll move in a couple options we can explore. So CA's put out an RFP. Obviously, it seems like the community wants it back to the way it is, so we can't do it. Maybe somebody else can, so we're exploring the option of let's turn it over to an outside pool company and see if somebody wants to bid to take this over for us. We have an opportunity, potentially one of our on-call vendors that we work well with brings in summer help right now and would like to bring in additional summer help, and they would like to work with CA potentially to sponsor additional H-2B summer visas and share those team members with us, where they bring them in from early March through Memorial Day working for them, and then turn them over to CA for the remainder of the summer to be pool managers for us. Attempt to bring out more closed days. So a way to do this would be, we have a lot of non-Columbia Association camps from the Howard County area, Baltimore, other areas, because there's not enough pools. You look across the state of Maryland, a lot of pools didn't make it out of COVID. A lot of water closed around the country, and they're coming here to fill that time. But if we eliminate them, it would free up a lot of lifeguards that are feeling overworked and overwhelmed, but it would come at a cost. You're going to have to tell people you can't come if you're not a Columbia resident on those. This one's a harder one. Again, and all of these options are just things you can explore. They are not committed to, but have morning CNSL practice start at 10:30. Currently starts at 8:30 in the morning, but if we pushed it back, the current pool shifts run basically from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So when you have these minor working shifts that are limited, it costs 12 hours. It means it takes you 3 shifts to cover that whole day with that group. We shorten the day and move that back. You could go to 10-hour days, which is 2 minor working shifts. Saves you a third of your staffing. So we're able to better use the staffing we have. And let me tell you, a lot of the teenagers would love us if we did this. And I don't know if our residents would, but a lot of our staff would make their working for CA a lot better, not having to get up early every morning. 10 a.m. is a lot better time to start working than 8 a.m.
What else would that impact? Would it impact pool open hours for residents?
No. That right now, that's all time where you're just backing it over some of those outside camps and things, so you're just pushing it back on top of some of those other rentals and things. You might have to make some adjustments to swim lessons, to other early programs, but for the most part, you're just sliding CA programming around. Additionally, if we did that, I would also say open the wading pools at those CNSL practices, because there's a lot of the parents have wanted that for years. But again, it's one more lifeguard every hour. But if you cut that back, you're saving a bunch of lifeguard hours, and those parents that are just going for the wading pool are going to see the people in CNSL, and hopefully it builds with, I want to be part of this. So I think it's something that would help with that. We're looking right now at hiring a full-time aquatic staffer to help with the staffing and the challenges from COVID, and bringing in an experienced staffer that knows how to staff a large group of people and back up the supervisors. Potentially moving the first close. It's been 3 years that we've had to move up those pool closing. It might be time to start scheduling the first close for the beginning of August and slide up first close to the first weekend in August, last weekend of July. I don't think things are changing. Even if the group ages up, you're still 2 years off before you're back to what you were as COVID works its way through the system. Otherwise, you're going to be right back where we were this past year, where we're closing 2 or 3 pools for whoever takes the aquatics director next. They're going to be in the exact same situation. So time to start planning for it now. Potentially open 20 pools per year with some type of rotation. Again, option. That's what I got.
Okay, Sky gets to go first because I cut her off before. Sky, your questions?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any questions for?
Sure. When you start training the staff, you can, the lifeguards, you can start the 32 hours in April or May. But for the out-of-town guards, you have to concentrate that in like the first week that they return?
Yeah. So we basically start lifeguard classes the second week of February, and we run training right up to Memorial Day weekend. And it's every weekend, indoor pools, outdoor pools, wherever we can get pool space, we are running lifeguard classes.
And I think you said that 60% of the guards were of high school age?
Yeah, about that.
And the rest of college age? Any adults or retirees or?
We have some retirees, and we've got a few that are great, but it is not a high percentage of our staff. Most of our retirees want to be at the pools, at swimming, not working and scrubbing toilets.
Alan?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand, because people do ask. The decision for the 3 early closings was based on which guards were leaving, and those were their local pool, and you were
Yep.
going to not be able to staff them.
So in this instance, this year, it was, a lot of the Dasher staff were gone, either because of the school schedule or some HR issues. And last year, we'd closed Hopewell. Hopewell's the bigger pool. It was move the guards that could walk, bike over there, and I think there was one that we moved to Stevens, that it was closer for them to get there. Same thing with Longfellow. This year, Hobbits was open late. Longfellow was the early closed pool. We moved the guards. Swansfield was where we needed people. We moved the guards over to Swansfield, again, within a half-mile biking, walking, so it doesn't impact parents and all of that. That's what causes it. It's where your trouble is with that, and you don't always know. Again, you ask everybody at your interviews, when do you leave for school? You try to space it out, but people get internships. Things happen. All of those things. It's a living, and if you ask somebody with their availability in February, every lifeguard tells you, I'm going to work every day all summer. And they come in and they tell you that, oh yeah, I don't do anything all summer. But as soon as they give you that availability, oh, I got travel soccer, I've got a baseball meet, I've got driver's ed, I'm going to 3 college tours, and it just adds up. Oh yeah, and the other thing you're still dealing with is all the COVID vacation. You got a lot of families that didn't travel anywhere for 2 years and are sitting on a lot of vacation. Families that used to take a 1-week vacation are taking 3 weeks, month-long vacations overseas, and that impacts every one of our kids as well, because they're going away with their parents.
Absolutely. One other suggestion that I didn't see on the list, I don't know how feasible it is, but like you were talking about, we were talking before about police and security and who funds that. It strikes me that, I don't know if they could, but non-CA camps, we could do some kind of, if you want to use it, you're going to have to either provide trained staff or, which would be difficult.
I don't think that's possible with our agreement with Ellison Associates. I don't think many could meet that.
But they could provide funding to, because I just think in terms of us, one of the truisms in life is that the bottom line answer to why not is in some respects money.
Yeah.
So we're providing a $2 incentive. That's clearly not enough. So we have to make some decisions about what this means for the budget. What are we willing to do? How much more, if any more, are we willing to fund the kinds of increases that would make the staffing?
We threw the $2 incentive out this year, and I think even one weekend we offered a $4 because we tried to not, and we offered up. We had 35 open holes. We had 2 people.
Well, but we could make a decision
Yeah.
that we're going to double the salary. I'm not saying I'm not advocating that.
Yeah.
I mean, we could make that decision and see what that would impact and so on. So that's on us.
Okay, Eric's next, then Keith, and then Karen, Reg, and then Karen.
So you mentioned the unexpected call-outs or calling in sick. Has that increased in the past year or past 2 years since say 2018, or is it the same rate?
Extremely increased. It's because we have no mechanism against it. Pre-COVID, if you were sick, you had to get a sub or you're written up or whatever. Post-COVID, you can't come to sick work. It's just the world changed overnight. And so when they call out sick, you got to find somebody for them.
So I guess my question is there an issue where, and if people are calling out sick and they just happen to be picking 95-degree days, which is, I'm not sure COVID makes everybody sick on 95-degree days, is there a reason that it sounds like people are not wanting to come to work? Is that something that you've been noticing? Has something like that shown up in exit interviews?
No, I mean, I guess it's a loaded question. So nobody wants to work on a 95-degree day on the middle of the summer, when the humidity is 100%, but you just do it. Like, that's part of the job. When you go into it, but the day, but that's why we do the water. That's why we do the Gatorade. That's why we do that stuff to try and make the day better. But the answer is there's an easy mechanism out. It used to be you called out, you lost your job. Now you send a picture of a positive COVID test, you're off for 5 days.
And I guess my question is there a way to make those days better? Make them so people are like, okay, it's 95 degrees, yes, but can we do something that incentivizes it? Incentivizes people to say, okay, I'll come in anyway.
I'm open to suggestions. I mean, we've done the things I know how to do. The waters, the Gatorade runs, I don't know what else to do in there. We offer up pizzas those days. I don't know what else to do on those days. Yeah, but again, this is one of the reasons stepping down. Like, this is not something I think I can fix, and I don't know who can. But
Keith.
This is more, and sorry that I'm late, but this is just more of a general question, because I'm seeing this in other youth activities and things. Is there any leadership or a true management training? And I don't mean the technical aspects of I have to do this with the pool and so on and so forth, but just in terms of understanding how to lead and manage and motivate people. Does that exist?
Yeah, we have that, and that's kind of what we do at the Leadership Academy where we go out. I have a really awesome video that I do as part of my assistant manager training from a guy that I'm trying to blank on the name right now that I know really well, that he goes through how to influence your staff, how to set the right environment, how to do that, all of those things. And we do that as part of that 4-hour training at the beginning. And we also have a manager meeting every week. And we throw stuff like that. What are the challenges of the week? What's going on? We try to have that ongoing training all summer long too.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I didn't have my mic, but yeah.
Sure. Reg, and then Karen, and then Sky.
So I'm really interested in finding out about the armed carrying security. What is the reason for that? Were you having issues with criminal activities, gangs? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So we had security guards. We had to hire security guards because we had a number of pools being hopped and things being damaged. As they were sitting in a pool parking lot at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I believe it was Swansfield, they were blocked in by 2 cars and threatened until they actually called the real police. And then that's when they called and said, we won't do this unless we're armed.
So that's going to cost CA a bunch of money just to hire an armed civilians. Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, I know you had the H-2B possibility of having them come in. Have you ever thought about, in some of our neighborhoods, we have got a lot of kids that traditionally either don't know how to swim or limited amount of swimming, kind of help them, design a program for the CA that where we get them in, we teach them how to swim, and then, hey, look, now that you know how to swim, let's see if you'd be interested in serving as a lifeguard. Also, particularly if they have a second language that they speak, such as Spanish and the Burmese and so forth. Is that a very...
So we already do that. So one of the things we do is we have a prerequisite water screening to be a lifeguard.
Sure.
And anybody that comes out that doesn't pass, we offer up, we want you to pass. We will hook them up with our swim lesson coordinator. We've done lessons. We sit there and coach them on doing the brick. We work with them. You know, I'll give this. I'm a great example of that. First time when I was 14 and I wanted to be a CA lifeguard, I went and I failed my water test. I could run 20 miles for the Wild Lake cross country team, but I could not swim the 200 and tread with the water with the brick. And the lifeguards at the swim center, they coached me through, they helped me with my lap swimming. The person that ran the test every week showed me how to tread with the brick. Like, we still do that with anybody that wants to. So I don't know if we have necessarily a formal program, but we also do all the other things with the CA Points program, the other discounted lessons stuff. But anybody that wants to be a lifeguard, if you want to be a lifeguard, we find a way to get you into our system.
All right, so some of them may not actually know that they can do this, and they may need that little bit of push, a little recruitment, because I don't think we actually go and recruit for these particular communities, which is something we, if we want to have a diversified, lifeguards or another resource of lifeguards, it'd be something that we need to consider. We may have to go out and recruit, tell them, hey, we want to help you. This is a job that's opening up, something you probably never thought of, but let us help you. If you don't know how to swim, let us help you. Let's get you through that so that you could have a job.
And we do that. We go out to all the high schools if they've got job fairs, all of those things. When we talked earlier about all the different recruitings from the banners and all that, we go out to all of those places. You don't want to do it, we'll help you do it. We have a junior lifeguard program. Like, any way we can get you in, we want lifeguards, and it's paid off. Look at our recruitment numbers. We're getting the people, and it's a diverse population. If you go out and look at our pools, it is a very diverse group of lifeguards out there.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure if you hadn't thought of it, or it's not something that's in your toolbox of resources, that maybe you would consider it. Thank you.
Yep.
Karen?
Yeah, thank you. So some people have already asked some of the questions I want to ask, but I want to build on what Reg is saying. So, for example, in Oakland Mills, I talked to the folks at Forest Ridge. I don't actually think the folks at Forest Ridge are aware or even using the Talbot Springs pool. How do we, I know you said you go to the high schools and things like that, but are we actually going into the communities to talk to folks about being a lifeguard? And I also have a concern, and Marty, I want you to answer this honestly, is it just sounds like you just really hated your job this summer, and I'm very sorry to hear that. And I'm really concerned that rolls down to staff, and that's just is that a cultural issue now because everybody's so burnt out? Is that something that needs to be addressed, the burnout for permanent staff?
There's a burnout right now in the aquatics division. Even look at our indoor lifeguards. We've got plenty of lifeguards, but again, they're still working less hours than supervisors. But we are addressing it. We've added some full-time supervisor staff, so we're trying to get that built up before next summer. So we're not sitting around waiting, even though I'm not going to be the aquatics director. As Dan and I said, my goal is never to see CA fail. It's to see it succeed. So we're trying to put all the pieces. That's why I made the decision when I did. I didn't leave and just go away. I said, I'm going to get us to the end of the summer, and I want us to have the absolute most time to find a good aquatics director, find replacements, get those, because I want to see the program be successful. I just know for 3 years, I've taken all the brunt of the attacks of the community. I've taken the brunt of all of that. I personally feel like I failed my job every year for the last 3 years. Every time I have to shut down the pools, I failed. But I had to make the decision. I can't run a pool and let somebody drown. So I had to make the decision I made. But the support isn't there that you're doing a good job. The support is from the community, is CA doesn't know what they're doing. You're not working hard enough. You could be doing more. And I've done absolutely everything I possibly can.
So I'd like to think that the staff are problem solvers. And when you're looking at everything that you've seen here, and you offered up some solutions, and it seemed like it was mostly around scheduling. But when you're looking at what the talent pool is and who we're competing against, when you really think about it, what would make, if you were a lifeguard, what would make it so that you would want to work the hours, so that you would want to do the job? There were so many downsides that were in this presentation. I'm a little concerned that a job that I know that I haven't held that job for probably 40 plus years, but at the same time, it was a dream job at one time. So now it seems like it's not so much a dream job, but maybe that's every job out there, but
Yeah, but there are a lot of perks to it. You get an awesome CA membership. And a lot of the kids take a lot of advantage of getting that membership because that's a way to get that membership. All those staff events and fun things we talked about, if they didn't like their job, we wouldn't have hundreds of kids showing up for the volleyball leagues and the different things. It's not all doom and gloom, but what you guys need to, I'm just trying to paint the picture. There are a lot of challenges since COVID, and we've thrown every possible resource we can at it. And it's not like we're not trying to problem solve. We're not trying to keep the pools open. But there are some there's some bigger issues in this, and there's some training issues. And some of it's going to just take a while to work through the system. And it might take years.
so when you look at the lifeguards and they get a free membership, which I remember that was, that is a huge perk. And then someone's not working all that many hours. How much time are they spending at our other facilities on their free membership? I mean, is that something that's tied to you have to work a certain amount of hours in order to get your membership?
It's not right now, but I don't think that's a problem.
Many of our staff, their family already has membership.
Okay.
So,
I will say, and Marty alluded to it, but he didn't say it, and I will say it. Marty's been here 26 years, and he stepped down, but also one of my assistant directors, Adam Scott, who has been in aquatics for 29 years, has also stepped down after the last 3 years. Fortunately, again, like Marty, we were able to find him a position in HR, so he is still a member of the CA team, and he's still supporting those in the field. But yeah, burnout is the right word. It is hard, and the things Marty said, I mean, it comes at you heavy, hard, and brutally. And it's not only, as Marty said, the burden that you put on yourself because you do this because you love it. It is not an easy job. If you haven't figured that out from what Marty just said, the team that we have does this because they're passionate about aquatics and providing that for people. And when we can't do that, like I have to get the phone calls, I got to do this. And it's more like me talking Marty off the ledge when he has to tell me we have to close a pool. But it's the entire team. They're working hours upon hours to make this happen. They're working their job, plus then sitting in a chair to guard to make sure a pool's open. And this has been going on since COVID. And we do have a core of staff who's been with us. And as I've said several times, the lack of grace and the lack of any kind of resemblance of gratitude, forget the lack of gratitude, it's just the venom and the accusations that fly when you have to make a decision are sometimes unconscionable.
So Dan, let me ask you this question. What are you doing to address all of this? If your staff is burned out and the community is upset with the decisions that CA is making, what are you doing to fix that?
So I am working with my leadership teams to provide as much leadership support and training as we can to give them. As you can see, I've been very free with giving and providing the resources. We're looking at every option in order to provide the resources to make sure we get these pools open. I will tell you, before COVID, there was no way in hell we closed a pool. And I pushed Marty to the limit. And now I give them that space, and I will take the heat when that has to happen. And we work with, we go out and talk to the community, talk to the villages when we have to close a pool to provide that space. And, those options we're looking at, we're taking a hard look at options to make sure we can create an environment where people can be successful, the community can be successful, and the team can be successful.
I'm very interested in hearing the ideas you guys have for solving all of this, because I would like to see the pools stay open. I would like to see them fully staffed. So I'm looking for things where the staff is coming to us with really solid solutions, Dan, for how we can avoid this in the future. Because I do think that the community gets frustrated. I think Marty said it
65 times. There is no silver bullet. There is no easy answer. There are so many problems, and we're trying to pick through them as many as we can. We can solve this one. Here's what we can do for this one. Then we're going to go to the next one, and we can solve this one. You know, the one that we keep running up against is August. That's the one that is the immovable object right now that we're twisting 6 ways from Sunday to try to figure out how to get through that one.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys telling us all the issues that you have. I appreciate you being very open and honest with us. And like I said before, I look forward to hearing what your solutions are.
We're working on it.
Okay, Sky, and then Eric, and then we're going to have to wrap it up here.
Mike Glebersuch wrote an excellent memo, and one of the items that he mentioned was perhaps closing down some of the pools and turning them into splash pads. I'm wondering if you have considered that, and also, has there been any effect in Howard Community College closing their pool and not planning another one because they couldn't find $12 million?
Well, it wasn't just that they couldn't find $12 million. They didn't want another pool. I mean, but yes, Howard County, the community college pool affected, there were 2 teams in Howard County, the Special Olympics team and 2 other teams that practiced out of that were gone instantly overnight when that pool closed, and we had to absorb all of that. That's part of what I worked with the aquatics committee. Alan was part of that. Bill was part of that, where we rescheduled all of our indoor pools and removed all the programming. And we got, there were 200-300 kids between those teams, and we got them all. We got the kids off the Clippers wait list. We got a lot of those kids onto Clippers with the schedule rechange, and anybody we couldn't get into that, we opened up all these Saturday night Clipper clinics at the swim center, and we got that, and we basically got that wait list. I mean, there's still a wait list, but it's not the 300 it used to be, but it's 40, 50, but the impact of the HCC pool closing was significant at the time. And absolutely, we've talked about spray pads. We've talked about closing pools. I was half joking with Bill, like, you want to have a different one about my Disney ideas on how to change some of this? I'm happy to come back and do that a different night. But it is an option. Community splash pads would absolutely make a difference. And I think, but even some of the things we were working on, COVID again, slammed the door on all the big things. Every year up until COVID, you look at what we were doing with the upgrades, the improvements to the pools. We were supposed to have 5 wading pools replaced by this point. That's 5 lifeguards every day, multiple times a day out of the system that we don't, So there are things that are challenges where we were trying to address them. The aquatics committee, CA, we were doing it. And then COVID hit us and knocked us down. And now we're getting back up and we're moving forward, but we're still not out of it yet.
And just a quick note, if I could. I have some old data as far as the annual attendance that I'd like to share with you. I want to let you know that the numbers that we have for total attendance this year is not a record, but it's very outstanding. And given all of the challenges that were here this year, I think that kudos to the entire aquatics staff for having generated that much attendance under all of these conditions that you've shared with us tonight. And I appreciate your honesty tonight. And I'm really sorry you missed your party. So thank you for everything you've done, Marty.
Thanks.
Eric?
Actually, Keith hasn't had a chance to get in, so I'll yield to Keith.
Okay, Keith.
And maybe it's a comment, partially question, and part of it is, I guess, experience in my pools is, you mentioned a little bit of it in terms of the vitriol that comes across in terms of doing your job. One of the things that I've wondered, because I know a number of people have been in this situation, is are we actively doing anything to ensure civility, I guess, with regard to these issues? And what I mean by that is I know a number of people who call on a regular basis to complain about, whatever thing they want to complain about. I'm not going to give specific examples because I don't want to do it on video and so on and so forth, right? But there are specific people who do this kind of thing all the time. Do we control for that and then tell them not to come to the pool if it's such a problem?
We
Like, I'll give you for instance, if someone came into my institution and started swearing at my employees, I'd give them one shot and say, you know what? I don't want your business if you're going to abuse my staff, right? And I'm just wondering what types of things have we put in place to ensure that at least those things aren't occurring on a regular basis?
So we have a 3-strike system.
Okay.
And then the second strike is we suspend your membership, and the third strike is we cancel your membership.
Okay. And it's actively used?
Oh, yes, it
It's
is.
not, you're not playing a political game and not wanting to enforce it?
No, you really have to be egregious for it to be canceled, but we cancel at least 2 memberships a year.
Because what's interesting
But we
about that for
suspend.
me is that we never hear about it, right? So what I would assume is that if we were, based upon what I'm experiencing and seeing and hearing, if we canceled or stopped that many people, I'd imagine that we'd have a list of people out here that are complaining to the board that we're sending them away, and then they'd have to stand up here on video and explain exactly why they had to drop the F-bomb to the lifeguard and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering, and I'll leave it at this so we can move on. I'm just wondering if we're doing enough to control that aspect of things. And from a board standpoint, that's where I believe, we also need to provide some guidance in terms of making sure that the community is civil.
So we a lot of times the first conversation goes a long way. Marty and Adam, particularly Adam, was skilled at that. And so a lot of first conversations never resulted in a second. But usually when it's a second, when it's suspended and then canceled, like, we hear from them, but they almost always know that it's not really wrong.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Eric and Alan, and then we're going to have to.
Okay, yeah, I guess my question is, if you were to, say, poll all the staff in the aquatics division, what would you say their biggest concern is going forward?
Call-outs probably right now is their number one. Short-staffed, probably those 2. And then overworked, probably those top 3.
And as far as short staffing, do we have a limit on the number of people that we hire, or can we just try to get as many people as possible?
Well, there's a limit on the number of people that you can train and effectively get through, like everything you just heard me say, like you're stretching your resources as it is. I mean, you've thrown everything at you. You've thrown your whole marketing team. And it's not just like your marketing team. I'm the one out at these village things trying to recruit, doing pizzas. So it's extra nights with me. You have our team, like just everybody at CA pitches in. You got the clubs with signs. They're trying to recruit. Like everybody knows, everybody wants the pools to be successful. You just drop this giant COVID in the middle of it, and it just shattered the system, and it's just going to take some time to work its way through. There's not an easy challenge to this, but it's also, you've been hearing it since the beginning, since they started the master plan. We have too many pools, and there are other options, and at some point, we got to address it. And there are different things we can do that will serve more people. But the lifeguarding is going to continue to be harder to recruit. It's going to continue to be harder. And there are other jobs and other opportunities. And it's just one of my funniest ones is we had, and I think the kid was joking, asked what his work from home options were. Like, we're not there yet, but, what people expect now are different, and it's not the same. And you look at the old pool staffs. Brent Woods, when Dennis probably ran Dorsey or whatever, their pool staff was probably 6. Now it's like 30, right? It's just a different world. But again, look at the number of hours guarding. Dennis probably didn't have all the outside camps. He didn't have evening CNSL practices he had to guard. He didn't have morning CNSL practices he had to guard. He may have coached it, but he didn't have to guard it. It is an entirely different structure and an entirely different animal now than it was. And every year it continues to change. And then you talked about all of this we did. In the middle of this, I managed a whole MDE project with my team with trying to get 4 indoor pools fully compliant with all these new MDEs. We were having cranes moving filters. All of that happened in the middle of all of this too. So you got 3 years worth of regulations we're moving through the system as well that we're trying to pay for and upgrade. So on top of all of that, you're also managing all these changes on the state level that get hit with you in the last. So it is a lot coming at us all the time. And, Alan was listening the other night, dead in the middle of July, in the middle of all that staffing challenges, what did the state of Maryland drop on us? Oh, hey, we're going to try and change the regulations on how you repair and maintain your pools. And I had to go run around to Annapolis and to a meeting up in Frederick. And between me and our legal team, we wrote a letter and we got them to rewrite a whole section of the law based on some stuff we'd been working with earlier in the year. But again, right in the middle, they try to do it to you right in the middle of when they know all the pool people are busiest.
Alan?
So given all that, I guess, and I don't want this to lead into a big discussion, but it's something I've wondered about, not just for us, but the whole question of outsourcing. I'm not clear why we think an outside group, and I know you're not proposing it, it's not like, but why an outside group could handle those challenges any better, since we hear it's industry-wide. So that's, in terms of that kind of idea. But I think, and Karen, I'm mindful of your challenge. We'd like the staff to come back with us with ideas. I think those ideas also need to push us around what are we willing as a board to provide, what resources are we willing to put out there for that. And then in terms of the community stuff, it strikes me there's a possibility that we could do a concerted effort with our villages and have that be sort of a theme around village lifeguard, village pool relationships, and something we could maybe do as a program to sort of prophylactically attack some of that before it gets too out of hand.
All right, I want to thank Marty.
Thank you.
For a lot of good discussion, a lot of good information, and thank Dan. I got to admit, a couple of things I took away is, one, just because of changes over time, we need more lifeguards than we used to run a pool, which just makes the situation worse. And he's right, because I remember when suddenly you had the staff waiting pools, and it's like, oh my goodness, we have staff waiting pools? That's when we started talking about replacing waiting pools with splash pads or other things like that, to try to lessen the burden.
And Wild Lake, I went to them and we worked at Running Brook and replaced the one at Running Brook. Running Brook attendance has gone up every single year since we did it. People like the change, so it's not, there are people on both sides of it, but, one thing you've seen, every time we do it, people tend to like the upgrades.
But the other thing too, which is, and it just like this brick wall, is the colleges, the early leaving for colleges. I mean, it's just, that's not something we can solve. I mean, that's just, we just got to realize that if most of our college age lifeguards go out of state, they're going to be leaving early. It's just part of the thing. But I would ask that could you at least send the briefing around to the board, in particular the last one where you had some options, so that everybody in the board is aware.
Send this
But thanks, Dennis.
So I'd like to thank Marty for a job well done. And I'd also like to remind everyone, we didn't discuss it, we had an incredibly safe year.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about all this stuff we don't like. I remember I sat in Marty's seat and I got berated by the board because I ran out of popsicles. Right? But we had an incredibly safe year in spite of everything else that happened. And I want to thank Marty for a job well done for so long. And I think the board is going to have to make some hard decisions. Thank you.
Is there any votes on this in October?
No.
Okay.
No, there's no votes. I mean, this is more, a budget.
I just saw options, and I was
But
wondering
we'll
if there's
have
any,
options we can talk about.
I was just wondering if any of those options were.
There's nothing up for vote in October.
Okay, just curious.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Marty.
Appreciate all the work.
Thanks.
Can we take just a 5-minute break? And then we'll wrap up with the rest of the.
By the way, do we have enough popsicles for the pools? Did we run out of popsicles this year?
Glad you brought that stuff.
I hope not.
I always ask that question.
I was just wondering, that was.
Right.
Well, Pointers Run's got their own pool. There's a pool basically right between Pointers Run and Pheasants Ridge. It's technically in Pointers Run.
I know where it is.
Yeah.
My kids have swam there.
On the,
That's fine with that.
I've got no idea where they do their practices.
Yeah, it's a mess.
In the real me.
Actually, I know when I see the cars all lined up on Summer Sunrise all the way to my house.
I think it's more a philosophical conversation. There's a,
But no, I've seen the cars lined up almost all the way to my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, cool. We won't be driving.
I've eaten all my pretzels.
I'm gonna try this
Let's
classic
wrap
trail.
this meeting up. We still have to talk about committees.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's like, I'd be driving a block.
What we should be getting from the committees in general.
Okay, thank you all for all returning. I do want to say that, Mike Liebersuch, who was chair of the Owen Brown Village Board, had signed up to testify, and there was a little bit of a glitch, so he was not able to testify. But I just want to call to mind that all of you did receive a copy of the testimony from Owen Brown in the letter, so please reference that.
Hey,
All right, on to improving.
Andy, can I ask a question real quick about that?
Sure, yes.
So we got written testimony.
Yeah.
Can we, maybe this is for future discussion, new items, but should stuff like that be like included on the website, like as part of the meeting archives when we have all that stuff, any kind of written testimony we've received?
Yeah, well, we can talk about it and think about it.
You don't have to belabor it right now.
Okay, improving board operation guidance. Advisory committees. Dennis, you want to say anything?
John, you have a few quick comments to get the board started with their discussion?
Yeah, I think I furnished some materials, just looking back historically to, I think, make sure you're not redundant on what's already been done. We look back at the minutes from fiscal year 2022, and it appears that, there was substantial discussion and a work group formed, of which our chair was a member, and I'm sure he could fill you in. But I even checked the video from the work session, and there was substantial discussion, there was study done, and the board passed a motion basically that recommended 7 separate recommendations. For the most part, they were adopted, but as far as I think might reduce your workload tonight or in the future, essentially, except for 3 committees, advisory committees, it basically turned those over to staff. The 3 that aren't remain to be the Aging Well in Columbia, Millennial, and the Teen and Middle School committees. The other aspect, so I would say that if you're going to discuss changes, those are the ones you should focus on because those are your committees. The other thing that was passed as one of those recommendations is that there was a recommendation that a working group between staff and the board be convened to review and propose changes to the charters of those 3 committees that are board committees, the Aging Well in Columbia, the Millennial, and the Teen staff. And from what I can tell from looking at the record, that hasn't been done. So that's one approach that you may want to consider because it's already been passed, and whether you want to go ahead with that to look at changes, it's been recommended, it's been approved by the board. So that's one way you can handle this. As far as what was passed by the passing it on to staff, I think it would be necessary for staff to go ahead and revise the charters because there's still the old charters there. So that could be done, although I don't think that really would affect you. The other alternative is whether you want to do something else, and that's up to the board. You want to act more expeditiously, not study. But I would say, based on the history, you're probably talking about focusing on those 3 board committees, and whatever you decide to do is your call.
Okay, thank you, John. I saw Reg's hand up.
Before we start, I just need a point of information. We received a memo through our super secret confidential virtue procedure from our general counsel, and I'm wondering, is there any of that we can't, I know some of it you've already talked about in now public meeting. John, is there any of it that we should treat as confidential?
Well, I think I don't mind.
It's a little tough to say here in an open meeting. I think anything that John mentioned in the open meeting is fine to talk about.
Yeah, but there's other stuff in the memo, so.
Well,
My
then
question
you don't want to
is
talk
yes or
about it.
no, is there any part, I'm not asking you to specify the part.
Well,
So I had a question first. My hand was up. I'd really like to be recognized. Okay, ask my question. So you're asking, questions here, and so I had my hand up, and he did recognize me. You jumped in.
Well-
So I think I need the opportunity to be able to, to ask my questions first, if you don't mind.
I don't mind, it would help me to know what we're allowed to talk about.
Okay, well, then you can ask that question after I ask mine. That would be the proper thing to do, I think.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Alan. All right.
Reg.
May I? Thank you. All right, so my question is, you mentioned 3 are not run by the staff, but the others are. So can you tell me what that means? And the other thing is, you're talking about a memo. I could not open it up, so I have no idea what that memo says. So going back to the question is.
So I think maybe you have it opposite. So 3 are board committees.
Our board committees, okay.
The remaining 8 have been turned over to staff.
Okay, so what does that mean? I mean,
Well-
when it's turned over to staff, tell me to understand what that means.
So I think it's up to staff to develop charters and decide reporting, and it's not subject to legal rules under the Homeowners Association Act, because if it's a staff committee, it's not a board. The board is subject to the open meeting requirements and such of the Homeowners Association Act. So that's the difference.
So I guess my question is, why were not the other 3 that way?
That was more, you need to go back to the
document, I can't
discussion
read
that
it right.
occurred
Okay.
when the board approved. There's an actual document that went with it, in addition, there was a report, and then the board decided that they would keep those 3 committees as board committees.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, now, Alan, and then I know it was Eric and Scott.
I guess I would like a yes or no answer. Is there anything in that 2-page memo that we cannot talk about in open meeting?
Yes, it's confidential.
He's already talked about some of it, so.
Right. There is something in a confidential memo that's confidential.
Okay, okay, let's.
Maybe not.
We have
Maybe
to
it was
move
just,
on.
that was maybe that was just the format he chose to send it in.
Look,
So that's why I'm just asking a yes or no question, John. Is there anything in this memo that we cannot talk about in open meeting?
Well,
Because I want to be careful and not to ask questions about things I shouldn't be talking about.
I mean, certainly the background information is historical. I don't have any problem talking, you can talk about that to your heart's content. That's fine with me. I mean, it's just historical based on the record. It's open. That's fine.
Okay.
The only issues I have are in the status and recommendation sections when there's a legal opinion or 2 about whether what may or may not be subject to the Homeowners Act.
But you already talked about that, so this is driving me crazy, because it was just talked about.
Alan,
in
what I
answer to-
suggest is you talk to John offline, because this is not the appropriate format. This is an open meeting.
We're trying to have an open meeting about this issue, about advisory committees, and if I don't know what we can talk about, it's hard to have a discussion. That's particularly since the part you just identified is a part you've already talked about. in open meetings. So
I would suggest we talk about
Really
the
confused.
3 board advisory committees.
Well, the thing I would say about that is, I think also referenced in the background is that the board, subsequent to that, did vote to appoint board liaisons to
Right.
some
Yes.
of the other committees. It could be argued that that was the board at that point, at the later date, making a different decision than to just have 3 that were board committees.
No, the motion was very specific to simply address only the part of the decision the board made on liaison committees. So let us please move on. Let me go to Sky and then Eric.
Yeah, I had trouble figuring out which committees fell under what category, but the 3 that still fall under board supervision seem to be age-related.
Well, I mean, I could tell you just from historical, so what the work group did, which was approved by the board, is they broke the 11 committees into certain categories. And one category was user-focused committee, advisory committees, and they define that as composed of users of a service that provide feedback from users of particular CA services to appropriate divisions. And that was aquatics, golf, health and fitness, and tennis. The second category was topic-focused advisory committees. And that was defined as composed of people with various types of expertise that provide input to CA departments, divisions on particular topics. And that was the Arts Center Advisory Committee, Climate and Sustainability, International and Multicultural Advisory Committee, and the Watershed Advisory Committee. The third category that the work group, approved by the board, broke it into was residents from particular segments of the community providing input to CA as a whole. So those were defined as the 3 we're talking about now that are still board committees: the Millennial, the Aging Well in Columbia, and the Teen and Middle School Advisory Committee. So what the board decided to do previously was that first 2 groups, they decided for various reasons, and Andy, a lot of it had to do with workload and time and effort. The first 2 groups, they thought it would be appropriate to turn over the staff because of the way they define. The third group, the 3 we're talking about now, they decided that the board should retain control over those, and that's how the decision was made.
Anything else?
No.
Eric?
So again, to reiterate, there are basically 3 groups of committees, as you said. But the board retained control over the community groups, but the topic focus groups are sort of a hybrid. So there's still a liaison to the topic focus groups. Even so, the user groups, there's no liaison, and that's the staff committee. The topic groups, there is a board liaison, and that's run by staff. And the community focus groups, there's a liaison that's run by the board. So we have the 3 that are run by the board with liaisons, but we sort of have another set of committees. I think there are 3 or 4 of them that are environmentally focused, topic focus groups that are run by staff but have a liaison. So I think that's another question that we might want to ask is that still an appropriate structure?
So let's talk about our 3 committees, because we know we have problems with the Millennial Committee. It's not functional right now. Plus, the board did say the previous board wanted to create a working group to work on the charters for these 3 committees, and we have not yet done that. So we have one non-functional committee for a variety of reasons. And maybe we need to really think about whether that committee is going to be viable in the future. We have the teens, and then we have the aging. Karen? Anything,
Yeah.
Keith?
Yeah, Andy, so my questions and kind of comments on this are we as a board getting anything of value from these three committees? Can anybody think of any decisions, anything that we've done in the last year or two where these committees have played a role? Because part of me is wondering is maybe the board doesn't have enough attention to focus on these committees. And maybe it would be better if we just stood up a task force every once in a while. If we had a very specific issue, reach out to the community, stand up a task force. It has a clear start, a clear ending, a clear objective of what we want them to do. And maybe that would be more helpful for the board than actually continuing on with these committees if they're not functional.
Scott, you have your hand?
Yeah, I think that's not the only question we should be asking, whether or not these committees fulfill a board function. I think they also serve the membership, and they're an outlet for the membership to contribute to the Columbia Association in their areas of expertise. So that's, I think, and a task force would take time to set up, would take time to find the appropriate experts. And I think it's a good idea to have some or all of these committees as standing committees.
Andy, can I respond to that?
Sure, yes.
So I think my argument here, Sky, is I want the residents to be involved. I think it's really important that we involve the residents in what we're doing, but I don't think these committees are contributing. I don't think anybody can point to any board action where we've done something that, I mean, if somebody can say to me, Karen, last January, we did X because the Millennial Committee wanted to do this. This was what they were working on. I just don't think that they're contributing.
And that's what I said. They may not exist to advise the board, but they have another purpose that is very meaningful and of service to Columbia as a whole.
So
I know the Watershed Committee and the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee are very active in projects throughout the year.
Well,
let me try to address Karen's, because I have.
Go
I've been on the board for
For a while.
yeah, for a while. So the committees that were turned over to staff are very functional committees.
I'm not
that
talking about those.
provide- Right.
The ones I'm
input
talking
into
about are the three that are
But
still
the three
seated.
for us, Millennial has not met for quite a while.
Right.
They did help. There was a Millennial report that was done a number of years ago that led toward the committee, but we have historically had problems finding people who wish to serve on it. I will say in some aspects, maybe it's not the way that group participates. They would prefer more a task force, a focused, versus a regular committee that meets every 2 months. So that has historically been a difficult committee to staff, and right now it's just not working. And outside of having them produce the Millennial report, no, we've had no feedback from them. The teen, literally no, because the teen committee functions with our teen center and the school age services program, and literally never interfaces with the board. The senior committee is a little different in that, not recently, but in the past, they have helped develop a action plan to address senior issues, which they did with the board, and the board adopted that and things like that. And so The last 2 years, no, they haven't really done anything to the board, and the board hasn't made any decisions on it.
Right, and we're supposed to approve their goals. They're supposed to present their
Yeah,
goals
yeah,
to
we
us. We approve them, and I don't think that that's happening either. So
Well, yeah,
it's,
we put it on the consent
Right,
agenda in July.
right, it's on the consent agenda.
Right.
Everybody just votes for it.
Right.
So, okay,
We
thanks.
we did our duty. We put it on the consent agenda.
Okay, I'm good, thanks.
Alan and Bill, sorry.
I think first of all, I don't know if we ever actually made a vote to change the name, but we were very clear at more than one meeting that the Millennial Committee is not about millennials, it's about young adults. And that's now really becoming the iGen or the Cloud Gen or Gen Z, whatever anybody calls it. So it really isn't about millennials who are turning 40 this year. So I want to be clear. I think we were clear, at least if we didn't name it, what the purpose was. I'm mindful of your question. My feeling is if any committee has been not useful to us, it's been because of the way we've handled the committee. Somewhat, I agree with everything Andy, you said, so some of that, but when we did, every year we have a parade of 11 committees coming in, they get their 5 minutes of fame or whatever it is, we fall asleep before they finish, one committee mashes into another, and we're not really using these committees. I've asked in the past multiple times, can we have one committee a month and hear that committee so we can focus on that committee? I think the answer is more of a hybrid of, yes, are there tasks that we can assign? When I do work with, for example, diversity committees in an organization, my first question is, how are you connected to leadership? How is the leadership guiding you? How is the leadership using you as a tool to get their needs met? And we don't do that with our committees for the most part. We don't say, this is what we're trying to do. We're concerned about how young people are using our facilities. Can you focus on that? Now, that did happen with that committee, and that was useful. But we don't do that regularly with the committees. We just sort of use them as an ongoing sounding board for the various aspects of things that we do at CA, and that has not been, for our purposes, as useful.
Bill?
Yep. Karen, I think your approach is a little bit off. I don't think necessarily we should be assessing or judging the value or function that these particular committees provide us. I think the failure resides with us at this table. We should be charging them with providing feedback and vision for what's going on with them. You don't hear directly from these groups, but I would say that you hear it in our conversations here. At our last meeting, you mentioned more than a few times, what are we doing about helping the elderly get memberships? And that certainly should be a charge that the Aging Well Committee should be looking at and helping us find that answer to. We should be asking them to help us with that, not waiting for them to demonstrate value. I'll tell you that the Midnight Mini Golf at the sports park is wholly enthusiastically supported by the young families and the young adults in this community. And although the Millennial Committee does not meet formally, anybody as the liaison to the committee, anybody that's involved in that committee does show up and participates in those groups and does that and engages in that particular activity enthusiastically. And once again, they are people who have generally young families starting out here in Columbia. Their membership and their participation in our programs and services are vital to keeping this organization moving. So we should be asking questions of them and not necessarily saying, what value do you bring to us? I would say that we look at it from a different perspective, and that would be a better conversation than the one that you started on.
Can I respond to Bill real quick?
Well, let Eric go first.
Actually, I was going to respond. And so we're really talking about whether a committee should be board committees or staff committees. And if the committees aren't really providing direct value to the board, but they're providing value to the organization, then they should probably be staff committees. If they're organizing things like Midnight Mini Golf, that's great, but that type of thing doesn't need to go to the board. It's more of an operational thing. So what I would like to see is all the committees, we have a consistent way of approaching all the committees. Make them all staff committees, make them all board committees, have them all have liaisons, none of them have liaisons, but I'd like to see some consistency across the committees.
Karen?
Yeah, I just want to respond to Bill. If the committees are this valuable, why have you not demanded that we do something with them?
I would say that boards have been interested in the committees. It's just the board gets overwhelmed with all the stuff we have to do.
So again, I would say, and I'll drop it after this, is
choose.
I think standing up a task force
Yeah.
for specifically what we need. And then if the board feels overwhelmed by managing these committees, maybe we're doing it wrong.
Keith, do you have anything?
Sorry, you just said the board feels overwhelmed with things that we have to do, and I was just clarifying things that we choose to do, because there's a lot that we do that's very operational in nature, and that bogs us down. And the board committees, I agree, Karen, on a lot of levels, because we don't even talk about our strategic plan. So the idea that we're soliciting feedback from board committees to help influence our decisions when we can't focus on the strategic plan is baffling to me. So that's, until we've figured out a true purpose for them, I don't see them as board committees. I do agree, Skye, that there's an outlet for community members to get involved and to be heard, because this whole thing of the village boards and the meetings that we have for Columbia Association, that's a stretch. That's a pretty far stretch for some folks who just want to be able to provide, some meaningful feedback on a topic. So I wouldn't want to see certain committees go away completely, but I don't know that they're board committees, at least until we've figured out how to, prioritize the critical items that we need to take care of.
Guy, I think you had your...
Yeah, I see the committees not advising the board, but advising the staff. And the three that we're mostly discussing tonight may not have a specific staff or department to be hooked up with. And maybe that's another reason why they were put under the jurisdiction of the board, because they were kind of miscellaneous. I see a reason for all of these committees remaining as committees, but just changing who they report to and ask things of and advise. I think I see each of those committees as standing committees, with possibly the exception of the millennials, as having a reason for being that's valuable.
Eric and Reg.
So this is what I'd like to suggest. Maybe make all the committees like the topic committees, where they're all run by staff, but they all have board liaisons. So that's I think one possible compromise, so that they're all consistent, but they're all staff type committees, but we can have liaisons. The board could choose to provide liaisons to the committees.
Reg and then Keith.
Okay, I'm not entirely 100% sure I understand what would happen if it goes from the board to the staff, but I think it would be a welcome move for us, because that way it takes us out of this battle that we're currently going on in one of our committees. And I think that really what we want to do is, I don't think we want to be a special committee like Karen has said. I think what we really want to be is be able to help the community, be able to speak for the community and help them, help us understand, and we can still do that. I think we ought to, like I forgot who it was who said it, but bring in these committees, once a month. One of them say, hey, this time we're going to highlight the aging well, and have them come in and talk to us, and the next month another one, so that we can also hear what's going on, find out what their thoughts are, and then. Going back to what Keith said, I do really believe that we need to develop that strategic plan, or take the one that we have, dust it off, and revamp it if we need, which is what we need to do. But the idea that these three report to the board is problematic, and it's causing us issues, and I can see it firsthand. So I would really go with just having, everybody, all 10 or 11, as going through the staff, not us.
Keith?
So two things. One, I wanted to respond a little bit, not that you directed it my way, but the monthly meetings, I have a really difficult time adding another element to our monthly meetings. We can barely get through the agenda. You know, one of the items that I brought up, and I know this has been settled, but one of the items that I brought up when we were talking about resident speak out is part of my concern is just the length of that in some cases, and the ability for us to actually get board work done. And we continuously, push the boundaries on getting work done. So if we had another meeting, and we haven't even started discussing the strategic plan in a consistent fashion. If we had another meeting, I'm concerned that we're going to, that we're not going to be able to get our work done. The other piece that I wanted to ask Eric, because I liked what you were saying, the piece that I wanted to understand is how would we respond if the staff said, we don't need this committee to provide advice to us or to provide feedback? Because I think that may get a little bit sticky in the sense that if staff said, hey, you know what, we don't really need this committee anymore, if we move everything to staff committees, and then, we get feedback from residents that says, we want this.
So your fear is that would staff be able to unilaterally disband a committee?
It's not a fear that I have, but legitimately, if we said that it's a staff committee and the staff said, the same way we're having a conversation about the value proposition for the committee, if staff said, well, we don't feel that this committee, other than ad hoc, perhaps is providing enough value, and they decided to disband that committee. So I'm not fearful of it. I just want to make sure that as part of that proposal, if I supported that at the next meeting, how would we feel if that occurred and community members were coming to us?
So actually, I got a question for Judge Kushno. Can the staff? So we have 7 or 8 committees that are already staff committees. Can the staff unilaterally disband those committees?
I mean, I once you turn it over to the staff, well, you're bordering on a legal opinion, so I don't want to get into that.
Okay, so let's hold off.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mind in general terms, but like specifics, like asking theoretical questions in an open forum it's difficult for me to answer because
understood.
It may come back later on, and I don't want to risk waiver if something happens, and that's why I don't have any problem answering, but like, if you give me specific scenarios, I'm not going to give you an answer off the cuff and waive a protection later on.
Okay,
That's fair.
Bill.
All right, just to move the ball along, I really don't have an issue with making these staff committees or board committees, either or any particular of these advisory groups. But I will say that the board should have feedback from any particular advisory group with respect to budget, policy, or strategy. Those things should be communicated both ways. Down to the committee, we would like your opinion on how your committee affects the budget, a particular policy, or a strategic initiative that the board has undertaken. And then that should be communicated back up. Many of them, the user groups, are also going to be involved in operational issues, and I think that's largely beyond what we should be involved in at all. So I think we need to focus on a few things. Budget, policy, and strategy, how the groups interact with us on those things. And then establish a communication protocol for those things, so we understand when those reports will come in or when those asks go out. And then as far as the operational issues, we should ensure that we wall ourselves off from those discussions and allow those committees to interface with staff to make sure that the best possible experience is going forward for our members and residents.
So, Bill, I just want to point out that that was one of the reasons why we have board liaisons.
Yeah.
So that the board liaison can communicate board desires, like we'd like to hear your testimony, to the committee, and the liaison can also bring back to the board any particular issue.
Just a quick response, we've never put it on the agenda for board liaison responses. It's never been part of the program. So I think that's kind of
that's
Part of
something
the
we can
failure.
think about.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that. Hey, next work sessions and meetings. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to do. Eric and then Scott.
So here's the thing I'd like to point out. Even if they're all staff committees, I mean, again, the president still reports to the board. So there's still board oversight at the end of the day. And as far as, I'm not sure it's a great idea to say, okay, these committees are going to make half-hour presentations every month, because if they have nothing to say, they have nothing to say. I think what's sort of a better idea is when a board-related issue comes up, that they, as a committee, vote to say, okay, this needs to go to the board, such as, say, the aquatics committee says, we should build a new pool or something. Well, that's obviously a board decision, so they would present that to the board if that was what they wanted to do. It's semi-intentional, that example, but it's just an example, So I think the best way to use the committees is that when they have a board-related question or decision, that it's as needed. So if some committees might need to come more often than others, or they might just do their own thing, have their own events, do whatever they're doing more operationally. That doesn't really need to interface with the board as much. I think a lot of it depends, and I think if we do things on an as-needed basis, we'll probably be better off for time.
All right, Sky, and then I'd like to wrap this part of the discussion up.
I really like the way this discussion is evolving, but I want to focus in on a small phrase that Eric said, and you said that some committees would be run by a staff member. I have experience with 3 committees, the one that I'm on now, another one that was just the opposite in how they worked, and I spent some time on the Aging Well Committee when it was a senior committee. And I think on at least 2 of those, I was asked a question as a board member during the meeting, and I don't, Jeremy and I were at the same committee meeting last night. I don't see the staff member as running the committee. Maybe that's not really what you meant. I see the committee running itself, and the chair running the committee, and the staff member being a liaison between the staff and the committee, just like a board member would be a liaison between the board and the committee. But I think the staff member would have a more active role, and I would think also do the administrative tasks of sending out invitations or doing some of that if the committee or the chair couldn't do that. So I don't see it as being necessarily run by the staff member, but maybe overseen or assisted by the staff member. And another thing is, at least in the village level, and if these were all board committees, the board is ultimately responsible for everything the committee does. And therefore, I would, as a board member, I would like to know as much as I had time for about how they operate.
Okay, Dennis, we're going to wrap it up.
So real quick, I recommend that we turn them all over to staff for consistency purposes. And I'd like to also say that I filled a vacant administrative position, and that person will be prioritizing these committees as part of their job, and I like to use the word facilitate, not running, but they'll facilitate the operation of the committees. So I think that'll make it easier, and they'll be more responsive.
And the committee is still run by the chair of the committee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Facilitated by.
So regardless, it's still run by whoever's the chair of the committee. The chair runs the committee. But the real question is, are we going to have these committees chaired by the board or chaired by sort of the staff of the organization?
Point of order. Were you done speaking?
I am.
No, but were you?
Indeed. Andy recognized me.
Did he recognize Dennis? Dennis was.
Well, thank you, but my point was just, I think they should be staff committees. We have a new person coming on board, fill a vacant position. I think we can do a good job facilitating the committees, and we'll go from there.
Right, and Dennis has said, and the recommendation at next board meeting will be to make these last 3 committees staff, just like all the rest. Alan and Karen, and then we're going to move on to the next thing.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, should we look at the charters for all of these, just to make sure they're charters? Is that going to be part of what we're going to do? Okay, awesome.
That's Dennis's.
I got that.
Andy?
Thank you.
One other quick concern is I think we also need to look at whether or not they have board liaisons or not, how that works, the board liaisons.
The board approved having board liaisons at all of the committees.
Okay.
Right. and
On
the-
a voluntary basis.
On a
On a volunteer basis.
Okay.
I mean, we can't make any board member, but
Okay.
each committee is entitled to have a board liaison if we can find a board member who wants to serve on that.
Okay, so that's,
Yeah.
okay.
So that doesn't
That-
change.
Okay, so that's uniform across all the committees.
Yes, that's uniform
Okay.
across all the committees.
I think that'd be helpful.
All right. So we want to board orientation and training. I mean, I tell you, one of the reasons I brought this up is in the last couple of years, I've had new board members come on and question, what do we do in terms of orientation and training? And I was really looking for some of our newer board members to kind of, propose some ideas as to how can the organization better bring a new board member up to speed? And so I think we did get some ideas, but I really would like to have some conversation, especially with some of the newer board members. I've got to admit, for me, it's tough because, I can't really think of what you guys need because
Well, Andy, I think that it's hard for you guys to bring us up to speed on everything because last year was so wacky. So there was a lot of historical stuff where myself and Chris and others were like, we don't know what you're talking about.
But you see, that's part of what we need to think about. Putting it out, maybe as part of an orientation, there should be almost like a debrief of what happened last year, a very quick summary for new board members, so it gives you background, because you're right. You walk into a continuing situation. It isn't like things end at one board and then suddenly nothing new. I mean, you are just kind of like in the middle. But maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we should have kind of a very quick
Previously on the city
preview
board.
session.
Well, and then the other thing I would like to bring up is something that Judge Kuchno talked about earlier, is that the board had passed several resolutions about our previous topic and then did not fulfill their own resolution. And that seems to be, that happens a lot. So how are we, so as a board member, as a new board member, where's the action items? Where, I know that you guys meet with Dennis and all that kind of stuff, and we put stuff on the agenda, but things that, have to be addressed.
Right. So that is a very good point, and that is why from now on at all our meetings, we have an action item update. So that every time the board makes a decision, we're going to do a work group thing, that is going to go on the list, and we're going to keep the list running. And so every meeting you get to see it, because it was Keith who pointed that out. And it was it's like, oh man, that's a no-brainer. Oh yeah, we should do that. So hopefully from now on, every time the board takes an action, makes some type of decision or something, it is going to go on the list so that we keep that in mind so that it doesn't fall through the cracks.
Should it have a deadline, this has to happen before?
Sure, yeah, you can put it. But that's a good idea, and that's a very good idea. So I think I had, is it Alan? And then, no, Bill, and then Chris.
That's good. Did you want to go first?
Oh, sorry, Keith, I did.
It's all good. Peripheral vision thing, I think.
It is.
You got Scott.
This is one area of governance I think should be delegated to a task force, and we should just let a group of folks just come together and pull it together. I don't know that it's particularly controversial, in terms of needing board discussion and dialogue and so on and so forth, but I think a small group should be able to get together, hammer some of these things out, and then bring it back and show it to the board and get an approval.
Yep, it's a great idea. Okay, Bill, Sky, and Chris.
Okay, thank you. With respect to the orientation, I think all of this stuff is great stuff, and it provides really good, what does Columbia do as far as, for slides, it's way great, but it's still slides, right? One thing I don't see in here is much about 501c4s, nonprofit, duty of care, duty of loyalty, HOA Act. And one or two slides, maybe just to say, these are things you need to be aware of. This is where you can find more information, that kind of stuff. Just to make sure everybody's up to speed on those things also. I think that would be helpful. I don't think it has to dominate, but it should be mentioned.
Point of information, I think, is what you're going to call, that's in the orientation. For me as a new board member, that was gone through in the.
Right. Well, I was just saying with respect to
okay.
this presentation here, I think maybe one or two slides would be helpful.
All right, Sky and Chris?
I think last year, Wes, the general counsel, gave a 30-minute presentation on duty of loyalty and all of those. So I think that would be good. And I had the idea of orientation modules that would be PowerPoints on different subjects and perhaps even a half-hour presentation on some of them. Returning board members would not have to sit through every single module or have to go through every PowerPoint slide, but there should be some updates every year for even returning board members to be reminded of certain modules. So I don't know, maybe obviously the computer security, we are tested quarterly on that or something. And this is certainly not an excuse, but I believe what happened with the resolution of the committees was that the decision was made at the last board meeting of I think, was it Janet's term? And then there was a new board because there was an election and there was a new board chair, and that may have contributed to the dropping this, the committee thing through the cracks. It's certainly not an excuse, but it could have contributed to it.
All right, Chris is next.
I don't know that I have my hand up, but I just did want to say, I mean, that I agree wholeheartedly with the, previously on CA board, just to bring new members up to speed, because a lot of stuff happened. There's a lot of stuff that's in the air all the time that we're talking about, right? And right now I'm trying to figure out priorities, right? There's the budget, there's the strategic plan. I feel like those should be our top priorities. It's great to hear about the aquatics and several other things, but I think that it may be useful to kind of cut through some of the things that are in the air and are in flight and get down to the basics again when a new board comes on and look at those action item lists, right? Have an action item list of these are the things that are in flight, and then reevaluate when a new board comes on and say, here's the things you need to get up to speed on, here's the things that can be dropped, and really evaluate those and take a hard look and be ruthless on what we need to focus on, because we don't have time. This meeting was scheduled to end 5 minutes ago,
right?
So we need to really kind of focus on the items that prioritize and focus, right? And we do a lot of Scrum and Agile in my business, right? We have a backlog of items. We regularly reprioritize and focus on the top things. I think that that's kind of an approach that we need to take, because there is a lot of things that we need to look at.
Rich.
I am a PMP, so that you were saying some great things for me there, Scrum. Anyway, I think what you have here as far as the presentation is wonderful. The only thing I would ask, and it's the phrase you used, you were joking and you said, and last week, something like that.
Previously on CA boards.
Previously on CA, yes. What I wanted to see when I first came back on the board was what were the problem areas that were bothering the board? What about, I was looking to find out what were some of the things that we were our goals and objectives were from the last board and where we're going on this board. I would want to let, some background information to find out what's going on so I can come in, read up on everything as best I could, and then say, okay, now I'm ready to, join the board and see what's going on. The other thing is, I thought maybe we ought to have a Saturday, early on in May. And so this is the board orientation, like we did before when I was on the board before. The only thing, when I said that, shoot myself in the foot, is, that's another Saturday that's going to be, taken away from it because we're doing some kind of training and stuff for CA, which is part of what we said, when we did this, where we said, hey, I want to run, that's part for the course. But I think this is very good. I just would add in, what happened last time so you can look at it and make, understand what was going on from the last board. Because there's things that you guys, even tonight, you said, we dealt with that last time. This is what we had decided. I didn't know that. So it would have been nice to have, had at least a small recollection of what had happened before.
Bill and Alan.
Just a quick comment on Reg's comment about spending some time in May. I think that if we spend time in May, we may be saving time with every meeting after May, so it may actually be beneficial.
Alan.
And I would agree with that. I think that was a useful time. The one sort of an elephant in the room for me that I just want to name is that one of my concerns in the past around orientations has been from whose perspective is the orientation being given. And there's not always been trust that the complex and controversial issues that the board has tackled will be given, like all the different perspectives that are there. So it's one thing, I think there's, this was a decision, I think that's already settled on the side, and I agree, those kinds of things need to be brought up, but I think we need to be careful that we are, whoever is providing the briefing does an intentional job of reaching out to people whom they know don't agree with them to create the briefing in its entirety.
All right, so I want to take Keith up on this suggestion. So I think if we could just get 3 or 4 board members who would like to work on a working group to just kind of quickly put together these ideas on orientation training, that would be very, very helpful. And then they can report back to the board.
Does that working group need to follow the week in advance notification of meetings publicly and have an agenda posted and?
Probably.
After, I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Yep. Sorry. But what I would say is, first I want to see if there's interest. So I will make the offer. So please email me if you are interested on serving on
Can we tell you right now?
Work group. Yeah, you can.
I would.
All right, good. And Keith? Good.
I would. Chris?
And Chris. That's 3. That's great. That's all right. We will create a working group.
We need a staff liaison.
And we'll have a staff liaison.
I think Dennis wants to be the staff liaison.
Dennis is saying himself.
I appoint myself to that position.
And by the way, we are going to actually have a form for working groups now, so that when we create them, we know when we created them and who's on them, and so that we kind of meet all the regulations. So there is a form out there now being created. All right, thank you very much. All right, let's go meetings and work sessions. I must admit, I really liked a lot of the comments that people had. A lot of very diverse opinions. But the way we are currently structured is work sessions, discussion, meetings are basically voting. Definitely, I'd say a thread that we have enough work sessions meetings right now. Nobody wants to add to them. But they may want to change the mixture. So, if we could have some discussion, I will tell you, as Chris and Reg and even Alan had said, we used to do board staff retreats early in May to set the key points of what the board wants to do. And so maybe we go back to that. Keith.
So my thoughts, I thought there were interesting comments also. My thought on this is that we leave everything alone until we clear our schedule and focus on strategy and budget. Because if we change too many things at one time with regard to how we operate, I think that it's going to create some drama for us. And so my recommendation, it would be to just leave everything as is, and then we can address this after we've addressed some critical items like past action items and strategic plan and all of those components.
Okay, Eric and then Alan?
Yeah, I'll point out, it makes absolutely no sense to change the current schedule for this fiscal year. So if we're going to do anything, it would have to change for the next fiscal year starting in May. So the question is, should this topic just be moved to the April meetings?
To when?
To April. I mean,
we should March. You don't want to think. I mean, we're at the end of the term. If you wait till April, this is where we get into trouble. Rushing to do things that we only have a month.
Well,
how about March?
I mean, either way, the point is that we shouldn't be doing anything that changes the schedule for this year.
Right.
So if we do anything, maybe this is a better topic for closer to the beginning of the next fiscal year when things would actually change.
Okay, Alan and Bill.
So
And I don't
mindful of
remember-
that, I guess I don't see any problem with, I think sometimes we hamstring ourselves by saying, this is a work session, this is a meeting. I think if in advance we said we have things we need to vote on, we can have partial work sessions, partial meetings. I think what we do should be determined by what we need to do, not vice versa. I don't think that we should have a schedule and then try to meet that schedule, force fit everything into that schedule. I do have a question. This memo that's in the packet, this was written by
which
CA Board of Directors Operating Procedures for Meetings and Work Sessions.
2017.
That's in our approved documents.
See, so this is not a proposal. This is not. This is
the
description
existing
of what we're
stuff.
supposed to be doing.
Right.
And the purpose of this being on the. I'm not clear what the topic is for tonight.
Did we want to make any changes?
Do we want to make any changes?
I mean, so this is.
Well,
it was approved.
then I would say, while I might be in agreement that we shouldn't make major changes to go into effect until next year, if we wait until March or April to start talking about the changes we want, then we're behind the eight ball and we're making decisions. So I think if we're going to think about that, we ought to start having smaller discussions about it to get there.
Bill.
Yep, I'm pretty much in alignment with Alan on this, pretty much. But by the way, I just want to mention, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but there's a lava lamp behind me, and it's really giving me great vibes during this meeting. I think it's been great, so I needed to get that out.
That's a Jimmy Buffett moment.
Yeah, there you go.
All in mellow yellow.
But I wanted to say, just quickly, from an HOA point of view, that all of these meetings are meetings, whether we're non-voting work sessions or not, we can go through all that. And just stating a little differently from what Alan said, but giving attribution that I think we're saying the same thing. I think that this is an important topic. We need to better define these into better, smaller chunks that we can discuss along the way, so we just don't have a big, in March, we're going to talk about board operations and meetings for an entire night. I think it'd be better managed if we made these into smaller topics and strung them along throughout the year so that we could, by March, come to some conclusions. We probably need to sit down and discuss that a little more, but I think that's the better way. Is that about right where you were? Yeah. All right.
So
Had to happen sometime.
Yeah.
I was thinking, hearing the conversation then, and I think that this might actually be a good topic to to recommend to next year's board to spend time to do it, because this board is going to get consumed with strategic plan, presidential search, and the budget. And I'm not sure we have the time capability to do this justice this year. And so maybe next year, because we'll have approved, it might be something for the next board to start early on and do it. And so what we would do is recommend that this is one of the main topics next year's board kind of addresses or something, instead of us trying to do it this year. It's going to take a huge amount of time.
I haven't spoken on this
sorry.
topic yet.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
A couple of things. My experience has led me to believe that the two major functions of a board are, number one, the hiring, supervision, evaluation of the CEO, and tied with number one is the budget, because we have to be fiscally viable. And second would be the strategic plan. And call me old school, but I believe in old business and new business in meetings, and it took me a long time to figure out the differences between a work session and a voting session. And I don't think very many residents really understand that difference. I would like to see them combined in the same meeting with old business and new business. So new business would be the presentation, the information session, maybe a little bit of discussion, and then the following meeting, it would be moved to old business for a vote, or if it's a policy change, it would be in old business 2 additional meetings.
Eric?
I agree. I don't see why we have a work session, why we have work sessions. We're not legislators. We're not the county council. We don't draft bills. I think just making them all meetings is a lot simpler, and having old business, new business, and that way you can keep track of, okay, this is what we can vote on because we discussed it last meeting. This is stuff that's new that we're going to discuss and then vote on the next meeting. I think having this designation as a work session is way too confusing. And if they're all meetings, that simplifies things. And I don't think this is that hard a thing to do. Just say, okay, all the work sessions are meetings, and handle them as such.
Time's up.
Perfect, okay. All right, so we'll definitely have a recommendation on the advisory committees for the next meeting. We'll work on getting the small group together to address the orientation, and recommend the next year's board take up the whole issue.
What do we need to do next year? I mean,
Well, I mean, for all of it, I mean, it's just, as Bill said, and I agree, I mean, how we operate, you know, is a decent topic for the board to take up, but we just can't do it this year. I just don't think we have enough time. Alan, real quick.
I think we didn't do a straw vote or anything, but I think there was sufficient energy on the board to say if the BOC wanted to be based on what they were looking at coming ahead,
okay,
structure a meeting as partially, whether we still use the same words, partially work session, partially meeting. I wouldn't object. I say personally, I didn't hear anybody say, come down hard on we need to maintain that dichotomy so rigidly.
Yeah, no, perfect place to discuss that. I mean, the BOC setting.
Board operations?
Yeah.
Might want to bring the policy for board operations.
Well, the BOC can't.
Well, that sounds.
They can't change the policy on work sessions.
Yeah. So one of the problems is we can't make a change until November.
Policy says board operations committee sets the agenda, so.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we want to officially change our policy,
That's different.
that's different. All right. I want to thank you all. Just real quick, you have a couple of things. I'll remind you the training session is October 21st. The grand reopening of the Columbia Gym is on Tuesday, October 17th. October 21st, in addition to our training session, if any of you are artists, Columbia Plenum Air returns. It'll be Wild Lake and Kennewickunda this year. And Walk with the Doc, which is a very popular program, is back in, and it will be October 21st. We seem to have picked the 21st.
It's a full day.
It is, yes. And then just remind you, the Language Cafe is the East Columbia Center on the 24th, and our next meeting is October 26th. So thank you very much, appreciate it.
Andy, before you bang the gavel, I just want to say the magic of CA personnel. Saturday, I had residents on our neighborhood listserv complain about how many mosquitoes there were in the open space down in the end of Wood Elves. And somebody said they had scheduled that CA, they contacted CA and the CA was going to spray for mosquitoes. And there was then concern from other residents of what was going to go on. And I said, well, this is the weekend, but I'll check with CA. Sunday morning, I went into the Dunkin' Donuts for the first time since before COVID. And who should come up behind me in the line is Jeremy and say, hello. I said, Jeremy, I've got a question for you. So that's just, I don't know how you arranged to be there at the right time, but that's the magic of CA. So thank you.
All right. Hearing.
A couple of questions.
Yes.
What's the status on the selection of the ethics panel, the 3 attorneys? And we're supposed to have a closed meeting this month?
Yeah, well, we're working on that.
Okay.
We're working on that. It'll be announced very shortly.
And what was the answer to her first question?
And we're working on the ethics panel.
That I
That's
push off to.
I could say we're close, very close on that.
Okay.
All right, so hearing no others, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and meeting is adjourned. Work session.
Yay.
It's pretty close to our
I
time.
need to make the
So we do need the
I'll say
recommendation.
unofficially after the meeting,
And I had a
Symphony Woods in Arbor Trust House